Hello there, everyone, and welcome to another community discussion live stream. Today, we're going to be mixing things up a little bit. Instead of doing this over Discord, we're actually doing this in person because I have here in the room with me a special guest.
Hey, it's me. I'm the special guest.
So, rather than doing this over Discord, the reason why I decided to do this as an in person live stream is because, well, my brother is probably the biggest Guillermo Del Toro fan that I know. He's been trying to get me into this rabbit hole, hopping on the Del Toro train for at least the past 10 years, if not more. And I was pretty reluctant to for a very long time for the reason that I didn't want to watch movies in Spanish, which I speak Spanish. I'm a fluent Spanish speaker, but I just didn't want to watch movies in Spanish. What can I say?
It's funny though because he only has like three movies that are actually in Spanish.
Okay, but at the time I didn't know that. Like I assumed the majority were in Spanish, and I just didn't want to. Um, but we did do the watch together, the marathon over Discord like usual. It was just that for the purposes of this discussion, uh, it didn't really work out timeline wise, and I really just wanted to bring in my brother because, well, we don't really get to spend as much time together anymore, so it's nice to do something together with him. And again, he is the Del Toro guy. Like, he knows so many fun facts, interesting trivias, and he can just gush about these movies forever. So this discussion, you're going to be hearing a lot more from him than me. Of course, it is still a community discussion, so, there is going to be that back and forth, but don't be surprised if you hear a lot more of his voice than mine. So, while I go ahead and take care of the shameless self promotion, plugging this around social media, tell us a little bit about your background, how you kind of fell into falling in love with Del Toro, your experience, and what led you to enjoying these movies.
Well, first, the first movie of his I ever saw, I was in high school. This was in a Spanish speakers class, Spanish for Spanish speakers. And what that is, if you're not aware or you can't tell from the name, it's a class for native Spanish speakers to learn Spanish, and it's more of the reading, the writing, being more fluent in it, in an academic sense. And we would read a lot of different stories, and books and things like that. And so this was probably around the end of the semester, so around Decemberish, I think, when the teacher showed us the movie Pan's Labyrinth, because obviously it's in Spanish. It had a lot of similar themes to some of the stories we'd been reading in class. It had themes of like fairy tales and discipline and fascism and things like that, and so it was the perfect movie to kind of end the unit on. And so we watched that movie, and that's really my first experience with him. And then later on, I watched Pacific Rim in theaters, and that's when I really fell in love with him because he was such a complex individual. He had, this dichotomy. You have Pan's Labyrinth versus Pacific Rim, and they're like two totally different movies. And I saw his creativity there, and then from then on, I saw every movie in theaters that I had the chance to. I didn't get to see Nightmare Alley in theaters because of COVID shenanigans, COVID restrictions, and then Pinocchio obviously was in Netflix. And so I did watch Pinocchio day of when it came out. I've seen it at least 4 or 5 times since it's come out. And Pinocchio is one of his best movies, in terms of like Netflix and things like that. But the thing I really love about him and I admire about him is that capability he has to mix these different aesthetics, gothics and the romanticism and all these things, the romantic period and all those different genres and mix them and blend them and put it in his unique taste. And it's amazing. And you can tell each of the movies he makes has a little bit of his soul. You can tell, he loves kaiju movies. Look at Pacific Rim. Everything in there pretty much is a big kaiju reference. And so that's one of the things I love about him is how much of himself he puts in his movies, and he especially puts his Mexican identity, his cultural identity. Because if you really stop and watch his movies, there's a lot of Mexicanisms. There's a lot of cultural identity there that comes from being Mexican, that comes from being Catholic, and the way he takes it and twists it and changes it is just so amazing. And I just really admire him for all those different things he can put up and change and uh, the way his culture influences his work. And you can tell that he just puts so much of himself into it. You can't help but love it because of just how deep and complex and nuanced his work is. And it's just stand out. It's amazing. I could just keep going and going and going.
I'm so sorry. I forgot to change the thumbnail. People were watching M. Night Shyamalan. I fixed it. I fixed it. But that's a
Okay.
very, very good story. Let me go ahead and put the video back up. I had to close out the video because I was editing stuff on the YouTube and I didn't want like to show up. So I was just like, keep talking, keep talking.
I can keep talking for days about this man if you let me.
Okay, so it really is like, just super interesting hearing your story, how you grew to fall in love with this, how you um kind of it started off just as, oh, this was just a movie that I took for a class. It was just something that I watched kind of offhandedly, and now it turned into, I really love this. This is one of my favorite directors. So that's super cool. I definitely really like how sometimes just like a small little experience, just a small little thing can lead to so much more. I know there were a bunch of movies that I watched when I was in high school that kind of stuck with me a lot, that were really like foundational, formational, and you don't think about it at the time when you're just, well, this is a movie that I gotta watch because I gotta get my credits or whatever it is. But okay, so let's go ahead and get started then with the actual tier list. Now that Ballin has fixed his live stream, we can get started with the content. So the way that this works, if you're not really familiar with the structure, the way this works through, we go in order of each movie. First, I kind of talk a little bit about it, what I thought of it, what I liked, what I didn't like, things like that. And then from there, it's me placing it in the tier list. So I place where I feel like it should go. Then you, as the guest, have the opportunity to either agree with me, agree with the placement, and say why you agree, or the opportunity to rebuttal, to say, no, this should be higher or lower, and these are the reasons why. And if your rebuttal is strong enough, convincing enough, then I either move it to where you say, or I compromise in between us, or I say no, and then we move on. So starting off, we're just going to be going in order here. Let me see. So first off, we have Cronus. And this is definitely a very, very strong start. When we did the M. Night Shyamalan movies, a lot of the early Shyamalan movies were kind of, experimental. He hadn't really figured out his style yet. And then with Sixth Sense, he became known as the twist guy. He was known for like the big twist. And he just tried to recreate that, recapture that glory. So you could kind of see the different eras of Shyamalan throughout his movies. With Del Toro, I feel like he got his niche right away. He knew what he wanted to do, and he just went in for it. And I really like that, because if you look at Kronos and you look at Shape of Water, very different ends of his career where he's been and what he's done, but they are very similar tonally, they're similar visually, image wise, thematically. Like, he knew what he wanted to do. He knew his vision, he knew his style, he knew his niche, and from the start, he hit the ground running and made it work. Of course, he has improved over time. He's honed his craft, he's learned, he's developed. And so because of that, Kronos, I feel like it's a very good introduction to the start of his career and where he started off from. He already knew what he wanted to do in terms of storytelling and visionary and things, but he still needed that time to truly hone his craft and become the visionary that he is now. So because of that, I'm gonna put Kronos into, that is not what I want to do. Oh no. I moved the OBS instead of the actual tier list. I'm moving Kronos into B tier. Speaking about the movie itself, I think that it works really well. Some of the imagery is really disturbing, unsettling. The use of blood is very fascinating to me. I love the idea of blood as a part of not just life, but kind of like in connection to the soul. That's a really, really cool theme that I really loved. One of the reasons that I love vampires so much, one of the reasons why vampires is such a really big thing for me, is because I do love the idea of blood, not just as part of the human body, not just as part of us, but a deeper meaning behind blood. Blood in connection to life. If you think about, religious wise, you think of Jesus crying blood. Like that's that kind of symbolism. Blood is life, and that I really love. I love those themes a lot. So just like the disturbing imagery of blood, the idea, the themes of immortality, youth, very strong, very good. The characters, I can't really like say too much about them. They were fine. They served their role, but I wouldn't really call them like incredibly fleshed out or memorable. It's more so I love the story for the themes and the imagery and everything than the characters and stuff. So decent story works well. I love the themes, thematically fitting. A good strong start. So B tier. That's what I have to say.
I agree. B tier is just right for this. This was his first real feature film, and it is a little rough around the edges. It does have a couple places here and there that things could be trimmed or maybe expanded on. I like the idea that he brings into this movie when it comes to vampirism as a kind of like a disease spread by like an insect, by a stinger. And a lot of the ideas in this movie, immortality and the vampirism, the way it spreads, the way people act, is kind of expanded on in the TV show and the book series The Strain. And that is, I think, one of his best non-film works, a TV show. It is really great. He's not too hands-on with it, and The Strain is one of those books that I do want to read. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but it is the TV show at least is really phenomenal. It is outstanding. One of my favorite pieces of vampirism within TV. But going back to the movie specifically, I do have to agree that it is a little rough around the edges. It's his first movie. The characters don't stand out as much. You could have changed things around. One of the things that I think stands out about this movie compared to some of his others is that Del Toro has this, like, quote, he has this ideology. Let the movie be what it wants to be. And we can see that, for example, in Frankenstein. You had Andrew Garfield was supposed to be the creature, but he had to drop out, and then we got Jacob Elordi, and Del Toro says, you know what? I think it's even better that we got Jacob Elordi because of X, Y, and Z. You guys can watch his interviews where he talks about that. And I think that's a piece of advice maybe he would give his younger self doing this movie, because it feels like he really wanted certain ideas to hit and land, and ultimately they don't land as well as they could have later in his career. I think, like, for example, the wife character, Mercedes, I think is her name. She adds almost nothing to the movie, other than to establish that the little girl's not going to be an orphan when her grandpa dies. But we don't have a lot of characterization here. I think it's really funny how we have Ron Perlman in this movie. This is the first time he and Del Toro work together, but Ron Perlman doesn't really do much other than be a bumbling muscle guy for the antagonist, and it's kind of mid when you really stop and think about all the other movies he's done. But it makes sense because this is his first feature outing. So I think B tier, given everything, is it's adequate. It is perfect. I love the Catholic imagery, the clockwork, the gears, the aesthetics of the movie are gorgeous. The one scene of the old man licking blood off the floor, I think is the money shot of the movie, and I think Del Toro said so himself in an interview. And it is just a fascinating. I think that shot encapsulates so much of how this movie is in terms of aesthetics, in terms of ideas, in terms of its overall essence. And I think I should stop talking, otherwise we're gonna be here for another hour, and it's just the first movie.
You're good. You're good. No worries. Like I said, one of the reasons that I do these community discussion things is because it gives me an excuse to watch more movies, to watch more things. Unfortunately, I have a Discord server that loves to watch bad movies, so the fact that we got to have a month of good movies was very refreshing. It was very refreshing to actually watch good things. Of course, you had a hand in that, Mr. Influencing the votes.
I am not a crook. I am not a crook.
But no, for sure. I like that a lot. That quote, let the movie be what it wants to be. Like that is good. Yeah. So, okay, moving on to the next one is Mimic, and unfortunately, Mimic is on the weaker end. It's one of the weaker ones. and I'm sure you'll have a lot to say about the behind the scenes things and stuff like that in terms of why it shaped out the way that it is. But when I talked about Kronos, I talked about how Del Toro knew what he wanted to do. He knew the vision he wanted to have, the kind of storyteller he wanted to be, his aesthetics, his vibe, his visuals, and you see that consistently in all of his movies, except for Mimic. Mimic stands out so much in comparison to the rest of his works because it feels like such a generic action thriller. Like, I love the idea of, this insectoid like creature. Like, that's super cool. And just like the general lore and ideas going on are super cool. But the execution of it just does not work, and it does not vibe with the rest of Del Toro's films. It really does boil down to generic action thriller piece, and that's not a reason to watch a Del Toro movie. Like, even with his other action movies that we'll get to later on, Blade, Hellboy, Pacific Rim, those movies are heavily action focused. They're a lot more action based than, straight up thriller or suspense storytelling type things. But even with those, even though they're action based, they're not just generic action thrillers. They have a lot of heart, a lot of soul to them, a lot of care put into them. Mimic doesn't have that. Mimic just feels like a lot of wasted potential, a lot of really strong ideas that were not executed as well as they could have, and that's a shame. It really is a shame, but I'm gonna have to dump Mimic into D tier.
Honestly, I agree. I would actually say C tier just because of how much he tried and just because of the behind the scenes drama. For those not aware, during the filming of this movie, this is the first time he works with the Weinsteins. And during this time also, Guillermo Del Toro's dad was kidnapped. And so he's struggling with all this. In an interview and like in an autobiography later, he says something along the lines of, when he's reflecting on this time in his life, he says something along the lines of, my father was kidnapped. I was working with the Weinsteins. In my heart, I knew which one hurt more, but my head didn't. Or maybe it's the other way around. My heart knew, but my head didn't. My head didn't, but my heart did. I don't remember how the quote goes. But that's meant to reflect the turmoil working on this film. The Weinsteins cut out a lot of things. They forced him to include a lot of things. They forced all these changes onto him. And this was the first and last time he worked with the Weinsteins. It got to the point where one of the Weinsteins actually went on set and yelled at Del Toro and was like, "This is how you direct. Let me show you because you don't know what the fuck you're doing." And it's insane, all the different things that happen behind the scenes. Allegedly, one of the changes that happened, one of the biggest changes that happened was the ending, where Del Toro did not want a happy ending. He didn't want big explosions. He didn't want, an epic gunfire scene. And yet, at the end of the movie, that's what we see. Happy ending, huge explosions, lots of gunfire. And that, I think, is evocative of just how problematic this movie was, because it wasn't what the movie wanted. It was what the Weinsteins wanted. And we can talk a lot about them, but to focus specifically with this film and Del Toro, I think because of all this force that was put onto him, I think the movie deserves a C because of the Del Toroisms that do shine through. Insect motifs. We see his ideology and what he thinks when it comes to the violence that's being enacted, and we see all these different things happening within the movie that it's not a lot, but it does capture what Del Toro thinks and what he wants and what he is. And also, I think this also should be C tier because it's a movie in the 90s and it has, according to BallPark, one of the best autistic representations in media.
It does. I was actually gonna say I think I should move into C tier just because they have a character who is autistic, and it is done so well. Like, it is such a good representation of autism. The story doesn't focus on it. It doesn't pay attention to it. It never calls it out. It doesn't say that he's special or different or anything like that. He's just a character that exists and lives with autism. And I love that. I love the fact that it doesn't need to be this big focus thing. The story doesn't revolve around him. Like, he's just an autistic kid, and it's done well, and it's done tastefully, it's done respectfully. I believe you had said that they actually retroactively confirmed he is neurodivergent.
Yeah, originally it was just meant to be like, yeah, he's a little off, he's got something to him, and it wasn't until a few years down the line when the Del Toro was actually open to discussing the movie more when he actually confirmed, yeah, it was meant to be autism.
You know, okay. I don't want to move it into C tier, but I do want to rename D tier. We're renaming this tier to, how do you spell Weinstein?
Let me check because I actually don't know.
Okay. We're renaming it tier Fuck the Weinsteins. Because that's what the only thing that was going to go into D tier. I'm just spoiling that right now.
Weinstein.
Okay. There we go. Fuck the Weinsteins tier.
Yes. But yeah, this would be the first and last time he worked with the Weinsteins and Miramax, which is just very telling of this. And in fact, there wasn't even a director's cut of this movie until fairly recently, again, because of how much he hated not just his experience, but how the movie came out, because it's not what the movie wanted, it's what the Weinsteins wanted.
Yeah, I actually was going to watch the director's cut version for this tier list because that's more accurate to Del Toro's vision, and I feel it would be more fair to judge that on the tier list compared to everything else. But I was unable to find it pretty much anywhere. It is very hard to track down. I think it was on Amazon, but it was like really expensive. So that kind of, kind of a bummer. But I would love to watch it at some point on my own. Just kind of like compare and see what Del Toro wanted to do without having, you know corporate shenanigans and being constrained and held down, held back. So
Fuck studio mandates, that's all I gotta say.
so true. Studio mandates. One of these days we need to do a discussion marathon. Movies ruined by studio mandates.
When can we do a movie marathon? Movies ruined by wrong trailers.
That would be a list and a half. Okay, so moving on to The Devil's Backbone. This is one that I know we're going to disagree on. I already know that I'm going to place it here, you're going to give me a mad look, and then you're going to go on a rant. But for me, I liked this film. I'm going to preface it by saying I liked it a lot. I really love how it uses the idea of, ghosts and spirits, and how it ties that into themes of fascism, rebellion, stuff like that. I love the fact that the ending isn't really, it's not necessarily a happy ending. It's more of like a kind of like a bittersweet ending. So there are a lot of things that I do like about this movie. There are definitely things that work about it. But I think compared to some of the other movies that tackle themes of fascism and other movies that directly, focus on fighting against fascism, anti-fascism, the spirit of rebellion, revolt, stuff like that. This one's just on the weaker side for me. I like the ideas present. It was enjoyable, but it definitely is a lot weaker for me. And I think the reason that it's a lot weaker for me is that I really just didn't strongly get attached to the characters. They're just like a bunch of orphan kids, and like that's fine, I get it, but I didn't grow strongly attached to these characters. I wasn't strongly attached to any of them, and because of that, it just falls as a weaker movie for me. So I'm gonna have to plop this into C tier. There's the mad look. There's the mad look.
I have things to say. I think this is a phenomenal movie about time and war, and not just war is bad, guys. Did you know war is bad? But it delves into the aftermath of war, the real consequences of war. Because here's the thing: even though it's a war movie, even though it's set during the Spanish Civil War, guess what? We don't really see soldiers. There's only one real scene where there's a public execution. There's a firing squad, people get executed. But other than that, guess what? There's not a lot of soldiers. So I think this is not necessarily a movie about war. I think this is a movie that is about the real consequences of war, those that suffer, the children within this movie. These are children of communists. They're called hijos de rojos, sons of reds. which just means communism, right? The Spanish Civil War was a war between nationalists and the progressives. It's a whole thing, huge thing. But the main point I want to say with respect to this movie, I think this movie um focuses on the idea of ghosts and the idea of, what is a ghost? That's the opening line. What is a ghost, right? And I think that's very telling of what this movie wants to be. It's a movie that's describing that ghosts are the pain, the embodiment of the pain that humans leave behind when they pass, right? We see only two ghosts in this movie, right? We see Santi, a little boy named Santi. He's a ghost. He was killed because he saw something he shouldn't have. And so his ghost is there because he wants revenge on the guy that killed him. And at the end of the movie, we see a doctor, and he dies trying to protect these kids. And he's a ghost. And the whole movie, this dude is super scientific. He's like, there's no such thing as ghosts. There's no such thing as demons. There's no such thing as, supernatural, blah, blah, blah. I'm a man of science, right? And at the end, he becomes a ghost. And I think that is a phenomenal thing most people don't talk about when it comes to this movie. Because it is meant to be, I think, kind of a flipping of the roles, right? You go from the science dude who says, no, there's no such thing as supernatural. We, the viewer, know, well, that's not true. There is supernatural. And then at the end, he becomes a ghost. And I think that just kind of represents how, a little bit, the arrogance of man. How he's like, you know what? No, there's no such thing as ghosts. He, is kind of mean to one of the little kids that believes in ghosts. And at the end, he becomes a ghost himself. Kind of, I think, because of his hubris, but also because of his inability to protect these kids, because of the pain that was inflicted onto him. And the other really big thing, and it's on the cover of the movie, the bomb. And I think the bomb is meant to represent kind of the idea of the dangers of humanity, right? We can be evil and cruel and destroy anything. Exploded bomb. Or we could be still and not cause harm, the not exploded bombs, the dud. And I think all these ideas really come together well when you look at the Spanish Civil War as a whole and what is happening. And I think it's just so phenomenal. I don't think there's any way to put it, at the very least, not a B tier. I understand why it would be a C tier. This is his third feature film, and there's a lot of ideas in here that kind of don't go anywhere. It is a very bittersweet movie, especially at the ending, especially if you watch Pan's Labyrinth, because two of the characters that survive this movie end up dying halfway through Pan's Labyrinth with little fanfare. And so unless you're a really big fan and you know who these characters are, you're not gonna get that conclusion to their arc, which is still a tragic arc. But I think it's very meaningful that he chose this to be a bittersweet ending. Because if you think about this movie within the context of his career, within the context of, okay, my first one was okay. My second movie was massacred. Now this third one, this is going to be something I really want to cherish and take care of. This is going to be something I'm going to pour my soul into even more than I did before. And I think that's why he made it a bittersweet ending at the end, because he's showing his feelings. He is wearing his heart on his sleeve and saying, yeah, this is how I feel continuing this craft. It kind of sucks that when I do what I want, it doesn't really succeed that well. It sucks that, I'm getting controlled by these people that don't understand art. And so I'm going to try again to do my own thing. And that, I think, is where that bittersweetness comes from. And so when you incorporate all these things into the film, I think that that's what makes it more of a B tier movie than a C tier.
I like a lot of what you're saying. I definitely, the theme of ghosts being a reflection of pain, the pain that humans caused and the pain that humans endured. I actually had not picked up on that theme. I hadn't thought about that, and I love that a lot. Like, just kind of reflecting, thinking back on it, and kind of tying into how the ghosts presented in the movie are all people who have either experienced some kind of pain or inflicted some kind of pain in some way. So that's definitely something cool I didn't think about. I could definitely see the argument for B tier. I think I'd be willing to move it up. And I'm going to move it up to B tier with the caveat that this movie is sounds so much cooler in Spanish than in English. I'm sorry. The Devil's Backbone, like, that's a cool name, but it just doesn't compare to El Espinazo del Diablo.
No, you gotta say it with a Spanish accent. You need a lisp. El espinazo del diablo.
All right. So yeah, I can see B tier. You got that one. Okay. Moving on next to Blade 2. This is kind of what I was saying with Mimic, With Mimic, it was a very much a generic action thriller piece. It didn't really feel like Del Toro's work. Blade 2 is very heavily action focused. It is, at the end of the day, an action movie, but it manages to capture that Del Toroism in terms of the world. The way that the vampires act, their designs, the world around it. And the fact that this is Blade 2, he's doing the sequel. He didn't do the first one. He didn't do the third one. Just kind of this weird middle one done by him. He's stuck within the constraints of the Blade films. What came before, what's coming after. So he's kind of stuck in this place where he doesn't have complete control. He's kind of working within the world of somewhere else. And he still manages to make it his own. And I think that is a very strong strength to be able to take this movie that is, at its core, just part of a work, contributing to something that is part of a bigger thing. The Blade trilogy, the Blade mythos, but really being able to put his own personal touch on it. Being able to put those small little things that are those Del Toroisms in terms of designs and attributes and just how the movie treats the vampires. Like the way that they act and things. I really like that a lot. The action's super fun. It's over the top. The choreography is just insanely stupid at times, but it's fun. It's hilarious. I love it. Wesley Snipes as Blade is just iconic. You can't really attribute that to Del Toro, but I'm saying it anyways because it deserves to be saying. Wesley Snipes, iconic.
The only live action Blade, period.
So, here's the fun part. I hyped it up and I said all these fun things, but I'm still going to put it into C tier.
I think for what it is, this is very much a popcorn action movie. You put it on, you turn your brain off, you watch it, you laugh at the goofy PS2 CGI fight scenes. It is, I think, in every sense of the word, campy, and I love it for that. And this is again Del Toro showing his strengths, his how flexible he is, how different he can make each film feel. You go from something as grim and depressing as Kid Ghosts in the Spanish Civil War to Blade 2. And it is still a phenomenal movie. It is fantastic. It's amazing, if only for its campiness and its fun. This movie has no character development. This movie has no deep character moments. This movie has no pathos. What it does have is a lot of fucking fun. And I think that's what makes it a really, really great movie. I think that for as fun as it is, its downsides do drag it down. So, unfortunately, I do think I have to agree with Brollin here. C tier for Blade 2.
Yeah, and again, it's not a bad movie. I had nothing but good things to say about it. It's just that I feel like with this tier list, since this is a Guillermo del Toro film tier list, it's not just ranking the films in a vacuum of how good was this film or how enjoyable was it, but it's directly comparing it to other works from Del Toro. And I feel like as a Del Toro work, he didn't have a lot to work with Blade 2. Again, he was contributing to a part of a whole. He was able to put his unique touch on it. He was able to make it feel like his work, which is why I included it in the marathon. I considered like skipping Blade 2, not including it in part of the movie marathon, but ultimately I feel like this is Del Toro's film. This is his work. It's not entirely his. He doesn't have complete control or complete creative freedom, and he has to work with what he has, but he makes it work. He makes it work in a way that's fun and enjoyable, and it's a good movie. But in comparison to the rest of his works that are fully his own, it just falls on the weaker side.
There's so many moments in this where you can see the Del Toroisms, the clockwork, the gears, the fighting, the vampires, the super vampires in this are very Del Toro coded. The secret rooms and all those things that happen at the last act, very, very Del Toro coded. But I do think I have to agree that it just falls a little short because this is just a fun movie. It's a fun, campy action movie, and that's not a bad thing, right? There's some campy movies that I really love. Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman is one of my favorite monster movies of all time, just because of how over the top, silly, and campy it is. So campiness is not necessarily something that's bad. I just think when you look at all these movies, for as fun as it is, like Brollin said, the second installment in this trilogy, so it's already got that against it, and it is not as, I think, polished as his other movies. It's a lot of fun, but again, there's no real character development. There's no real arcs that these characters undergo, right? But it's just a really fun time. I really enjoyed it. It's a fun time. C tier, I think, just works really well.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on now to a comic book movie that is fully his own, Hellboy. And I loved Hell. I actually have the Hellboys in the wrong order. That's two. This is one. Okay. I love Hellboy. I really, really loved Hellboy. Like, I was surprised how much I loved this. I thought I was gonna enjoy it. I thought this was gonna be like, yeah, this is fun. This was enjoyable. I expected a Blade too. I expected a Blade kind of experience where it was just like, okay, this is a fun action, popcorn movie. Got some cool monsters and stuff, but Hellboy had so much heart to it. Like, it had so much emotion. It was so strong. I love the scenes at the beginning with baby Hellboy. Like, it's just so cute. Um, it really does a great job of selling you on this character and this world. Ron Perlman as Hellboy is iconic. It is definitely an icon, and it just works masterfully. He fits that role to a T. I made the joke while we were watching these movies that um, Ron Perlman is to Guillermo del Toro what Bruce Willis is to M. Night Shyamalan. And that's just, it is fitting, it is accurate, because you cannot separate the two. You can't have a Del Toro movie where Ron Perlman is perfect for a role and then put someone else in it. Like, it's actually funny because there was supposed to be a third Hellboy movie. There was supposed to be a Hellboy 3, but they ended up not going with Del Toro scripts. They were going to do another script, and Ron Perlman was just like, no, I'm not coming back. I'm not going to do it without Del Toro. So they completely scrapped the third one, and they just rebooted, and then the reboot flopped, and Hellboy kind of died, so that sucks. But I love that. I love that solidarity between Ron Perlman and Del Toro, where he loves Hellboy. He loves the character. He loves playing it, but he would not come back to Hellboy without Del Toro. And I think part of that is not just the bond that they have and the friendship that they have, but because Del Toro really did make Hellboy what it is. I love this movie a lot. It is so fun. It is a great action movie. It has a lot of heart to it, a lot of character to it, and Ron Perlman's Hellboy is just an unmatched icon. This is very, very much A tier.
Honestly, agree. This is, I think, Blade 2 done right. It takes a lot of the same kind of ideas from Hellboy, or from Blade 2, in terms of, like, the fantastical, and it just kind of elaborates on them even more. There's real development. Hellboy is a person with feelings. He has angst over his general prophecy, right? He has an unrequited love. He has all these things that make him feel things, and he's a person deep down. I love the archetype of, like, old doctor that Del Toro uses a lot in his movies. There's one even in The Strain, like an old mentor type archetype, and I just really love that archetype. And so there's a lot of just fantastic things about Hellboy. Doug Jones, I think, is very underrated in this. Spoiler alert, I'm going to talk about it when we get to Pan's Labyrinth in a moment. But Doug Jones is just a phenomenal actor. He's fantastic in all of the movies that he's in, whether it's Del Toro or not. And I think Del Toro was the one that gave him, that boost to be in a lot of things. He is just phenomenal in the role as Abe Fishman. I love the different capabilities of each person. You don't just have Hellboy solving everything because he's the strongest. He's sure strong, but he's stubborn and kind of stupid. Like, not that he's not smart, but like he just doesn't think things through sometimes. Abe is just super smart. He's a strategist almost, and just everything about it is just such a fantastic movie. It's so much fun. It has its campy moments too, but it also has all that character development and all the different characterizations for each person, and I think it's phenomenal. It has Rasputin in it, which I think is really funny. There's so many just really really great things about this movie as a fun action popcorn movie. It has depth to it too, though, which is I think even more impressive. But I think that's all pretty much I have to say about Hellboy.
Yeah, the other thing that I love about Hellboy, which surprised we haven't talked about this enough because that is Del Toro's thing, practical effects. The
Yes.
practical effects on Hellboy are a really, really nice touch. It's fun to make fun of Blade 2's, PlayStation CGI, but the practical effects, man. I'm not even a huge practical effects guy, which is funny because I'm a Toku fan, but I like practical effects. I think when they're used well and they're nice. But I'm not one of those. I'm not one of those people that sees practical effects in a movie and they're just like, oh, there it is. There's the practical effect. There it is. I'm just like, oh yeah, that's cool. That's nice. But Del Toro's practical effects. He loves practical effects. He's a practical effects kind of guy, and it works for him. He makes it work really nicely. So
I said it before in one of the movies we were watching during the Discord movie nights, but Del Toro is essentially the good version of what's his name? The Inception guy? I always forget his name because I don't care about him anymore.
Christopher Nolan.
There you go, Christopher Nolan. Guillermo Del Toro is Christopher Nolan does right. Whereas Nolan is, gonna go really hard to not use CG like ever if possible. Del Toro will say, you know what, we'll do things practical and use CG to enhance and to make things look bigger or cooler or more impressive. And I think that's one of his strengths as a filmmaker is using CG to enhance, to make things look bigger or scarier or creepier or whatever the scene calls for. I love that Hellboy went, the Fantastic Four route. I'm not sure which one came out first, Fantastic Four or Hellboy in terms of the movies, but having a real person in the suit, I think is really important, like they did with the Thing in the original 2000s Fantastic Four movies.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very big part of Hellboy's character is that, he has this gruff exterior, but deep down he's like this person. He's a guy. He's a man, just like anyone else. And I think to borrow some of the wording that they use with the Thing on Fantastic Four, I think that's really important because it shows what the character is. The character is not just, this prophesized doombringer. He's not just this literal devil from the Bible. He is a person deep down because he had a real father that loved and cared for him, and I think that's a very important thing about his character. He's not just this big demon for the sake of being a big demon, right? There's depth and nuance to Hellboy as an individual character, and I think that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Real quick before we move on, just want to acknowledge in the chat, Orville Conception Reviews. How are you doing? I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Just here, discussing Guillermo Del Toro films with my brother. We watched all these movies in my community Discord server together with a couple of other friends, and now we're just going through and ranking them and talking about them. So, thanks for asking. Thanks for stopping by. So, moving on next to Pan's Labyrinth, and this is definitely the big one. Pan's Labyrinth is one of those things that is just synonymous with Guillermo del Toro. Like, you think Del Toro, Pan's Labyrinth, probably Pan's Labyrinth and Shape of Water are the two that instantly pop to your head. Those are the Del Toro films. With Pan's Labyrinth, this is one of those that, like I said, my brother has been trying to get me to watch Del Toro movies for years, and Pan's Labyrinth was one of them. He has this really cool box set type thing with like a bunch of collectible little things of Pan's Labyrinth. And back when we used to share a room, when he used to live together with me and my parents before he moved out and got married, he would always have that on his shelf, and it would be like one of his most precious items. And I was just like, yeah, that's pretty cool. But I never paid much attention to it. And now, having finally seen Pan's Labyrinth, I can say, why did you make me watch this movie? It was great. It was beautiful. It was amazing. But it made me depressed. This is a depressive movie. It is so bleak and dark and lifeless. Like, I was just left sitting there empty, just kind of contemplating, man, life kind of sucks, doesn't it? Because this movie is all about, the evils of life and the darkness and the cruelness of reality and fascism. And yes, it's also about rebellion and fighting back, but it's just such a bleak and dark movie. And we live in a time where fascism is on the rise and reality already sucks. So now you show me a movie that reminds me life sucks? I love this movie. It was great. It was beautiful. It made me cry, but it made me so, so depressed. And that's why you get a special tier, Pan's Labyrinth. For all intents and purposes, this is S tier, but it goes in a special tier of its own right here, which is this movie made me depressed tier. Because that's what this movie did to me. This movie, no, bad, stop. This movie just, it broke me on so many levels. I am of the belief that the magic, the fairy tales were not real. I'm of the belief that it was just a coping mechanism, that it was just her way of escaping from reality, that there was no real magic, there were no real fairy tales. Everything was her way of using fairy tales as a coping mechanism, as a way of trying to escape the bleakness of life. But the fairy tales were dark too. The fairy tales weren't beautiful and magical and this escape from reality. They were just as dark as life itself. So what are you telling me? You're telling me life sucks and escapism sucks? Everything just sucks.
Someone hasn't read the original Grimm Brothers fairy tales. The whole point of Pan's Labyrinth is to, in a way, deconstruct fairy tales. It's not just fairy tales make me feel happy and therefore everything's gonna be better. The point of Pan's Labyrinth and the point of fairy tales is to teach a lesson. That's really what fairy tales were all about at the beginning. It wasn't about escapism. And Del Toro is using that to craft a specific message. And what is that message? The movie tells you right in your face. Blind obedience is bad. The whole movie is based around, do you have blind obedience or not? The commander in this movie is this fascist arm of this fascist regime, and he commands the soldiers and they order no questions asked, right? The faun that shows up and asks Ophelia to do these things in order to prove that she's the fairy princess expects her to follow his commands, no questions asked. The problem is that blind obedience is just bad. You should never have blind obedience to anyone or anything, because the moment you do that, you give up your free will, you give up what it means to be human, and that ultimately is the message of the movie. And it could be in a matter of fascism, it could be in the matter of obedience to your parents or anything. Blind obedience is always wrong. To paraphrase a quote that one of the doctors says in the movies, to obey a man just like that, that's something only men like you do, Colonel. And that's the message of the movie. You do not have blind obedience. You question, you wonder, you follow your instincts. But at the same time, the movie tells you that sometimes you are going to be wrong, right? Ophelia in the movie, she has her 3 tasks. Her second task is to go into the Pale Man's chamber and, using the magic key that she got, unlock the right box and free the other fairies. And at the same time, there's this huge temptation, a banquet of food in front of her. For context, she hasn't eaten in a whole day because she was punished to go to bed without dinner because she got her dress dirty, right? So the whole point of the scene is temptation. She is, really, really hungry. She's almost starving, right? And so she goes through, it's a banquet. It's a beautiful thing. She ignores it, goes to the little box. The fairies point to the second of these 3 locked boxes. And so she puts her key in not the second one that she's being told to do. Again, blind obedience. She follows her gut, her instinct. She follows her own path and puts the key in the first keyhole, turns it, and boom, you're good, right? So she realizes, hey, maybe I shouldn't just listen to what these fairies say. And she's walking back. She's going back to the magic doorway she created to get into the pale man's room. And that's when she starts going through the banquet again. And she gets greedy and she starts eating a grape and she eats another grape. And that's when the pale man wakes up. And the pale man is a whole nother bucket of worms I could delve into. But to summarize my point, this movie is all about questioning authority and fighting back, even in small ways. It's about how authority and fascism always leaves gaps for you to expose, right? Throughout the movie, there's the subplot of rebels hiding in the same mountains that the Colonel is in. And so he needs to exterminate them. He needs to get rid of them and capture them and execute them and all these things for treason, essentially. Because Spanish Civil War is over and he's in charge now. Fascism rules, and these guys are trying to keep fighting. They're the rebels. They're the bad guys. They're terrorists, right? Make of them what you will. And so the biggest reason that these rebels were able to keep going, they were stealing supplies from the Colonel. Now here's the question: how were they doing it? They had an inside woman, the head maid, the head secretary lady, the one that's in charge of telling all the servants what to do, the head servant lady. She made a copy of the key. She would open, the supply room, and she would sneak away whatever supplies she could. And this whole time, throughout the whole movie, she is unseen doing this. Not because she's, super covert and invisible or whatever. It's because she's beneath notice. She's beneath attention. A, because she's a woman. B, because of her lowly status. And C, because who would ever expect someone to disobey the fascistic leader? And so this whole movie, it is a fairy tale. This movie is one big fairy tale telling you, hey, you do not need to blindly obey authority. And if it's depressing, that's because the Brothers Grimm are depressing, right? Little Mermaid, she dies, but because mermaids don't have souls, she turns to sea foam and she has to do good deeds for 10,000 years or whatever, right? That's the kind of fairy tale this is. This is a down to earth fairy tale, and I think because it's a fairy tale, that magic has to be real. There has to be no way around it. This movie is set in the same continuity as The Devil's Backbone, right? So we know ghosts are real. Who's to say fawns aren't real? Who's to say fairies and magic aren't real? We know ghost exists, right? The two characters from the end of Devil's Backbone show up partway through this movie and they die. They get killed. And so that's the connection there. But looking at this universe, if ghosts are real, why do we have to say fairies and magic aren't real? Why do we have to say these monsters aren't real? And even if the fairy tale monsters aren't real, guess what? There are real monsters. That fascism. And you fight fascism by standing up to it, looking it in the eyes and saying, no, you are the monster. You are the evil. You have to be defeated. And I think that message is so much more resonant now than when this movie came out in the early 2000s. And that's why I think this movie is beyond an S tier. I think for many, many, many multiple reasons, I think this is my favorite Guillermo Del Toro movie. It's one of, if not the number one of my favorite. But I think the more I stop and think about this movie, the more I love the nuance within it, the messaging, everything within this movie is just, there's just so much to talk about. You could write hundreds of thousands of video essays and still not get through every single plot point in this movie. And I think this movie is just so much more than what it is. And I think it deserves its own tier. Yeah, maybe not this movie made me depressed, but I think it deserves triple S tier. And I think I'm gonna stop there, otherwise this thing will be like 5 hours long.
I like a lot of what you're saying. I'm still sticking with the belief the magic wasn't real. I just think that the movie, for me, works better that way, which maybe feeds into the depression. What does that say about me? Who knows? I thought I was Mr. Optimism, but I guess not. Thanks, Del Toro. But I do really love just like all of those little things, the connections, and how, yeah, at the end of the day, the point of this movie it's not about magic or fairy tales or anything like that. The core message is about fighting back, about not subjecting, not blindly believing, not blindly following, and truly fighting against fascism. Which, by the way, we have said fascism so many times. If I had monetization, we'd have lost it a long time ago.
Let me say it one more time. Fuck fascism.
So very much a very very strong message, and a movie that tells it in such a beautiful way. Vidal is one of the most evil characters in not just in Del Toro's movies, but in movies. He is so vile, he is so evil, he is so heartless and cruel and callous. And I love when he's dying, he doesn't have an ounce of regret, he doesn't have an ounce of remorse, he doesn't even care that he's dying. The only thing he cares about is his son, his heir. Make sure that my legacy lives on, make sure he carries my name. And just the stinging line of, he won't even know your name. Like, he dies with nothing. He has nothing left. No legacy, no remembrance. The only thing that he has left when he dies is the pain that he inflicted onto others. He is the perfect villain for this movie. He is just so good at the villain. He's so captivating. He has a strong presence throughout the film. He reminds you that he is in charge, and he shows his commanding presence the way he steals the screen time. Like, I adore him as a villain so much, because he just fits the role of a villain, and especially the role of a villain in regards to being a fascist leader. Like, he very much embodies fascism as a character, and his death is just so rewarding. The fact that his last act, the last thing he does before dying, is shooting an innocent child who returned his son to him. Like, she returns his son, she gives it to him. He knows he's about to die. He knows he's not going to get to spend time with his son. But either way, because this child dared oppose him, he killed her. He killed a child, that just for the sheer fact that she dared oppose him. A child that was his daughter, by the way. Because of the fact she dared oppose him, she deserved death. And that was the last thing he did, knowing he was about to die. This man is evil incarnate.
I definitely agree. This man is just fascism incarnate. I think that by having a villain just so black and evil like him, you understand fascism, because this dude is all about order, cleanliness. Everything needs to be perfect. He's always fixing a watch, right? That's meant to kind of represent how meticulous he is. He's shaving, pretty much like every day, shining his shoes, right? Ophelia gets dirty because she does a thing, finding a frog and killing the frog with a magic rock or whatever. And I think that the biggest reason her mom gets mad at Ophelia is because the Colonel's going to be upset, right? He's all about order and progress and paternalism. When Ophelia and her mother show up, they go to like the cabin where he is, the station where he's at in the forest, and he greets them. And in Spanish, this is really important. This is why you should always watch languages in their watch movies in the original language, is because when he greets them, he says "bienvenidos," and that's a big deal, because in Spanish, Spanish is a gendered language, right? It's a Romance language. It's gendered. And so bienvenidos means welcome, but in a masculine way, right? The O ending signifies masculinity, because in Spanish, if you have a group of people and there is just one male there, you use the masculine words for it. So los niños, right? If you have 5 kids, 4 girls and 1 boy, it's los niños. So when he says bienvenidos, it's because he's addressing them because of his masculine son, because his wife is pregnant with his son. And so he values that paternalistic way there, that masculinity there. He says bienvenidos. At a certain point, his wife gets sick because of the baby, and the doctor says, hey, she might die in pregnancy. And he's like, as long as she delivers my son, that's all that matters, right? If she dies, who the fuck cares? She's just a womb for my son. And that is, especially today, so much more important to point out and say, hey, fuck you, that's fucked up, right? And I think that just is even more of this authoritarianism, because authoritarianism and paternalistic societies tend to go hand in hand, right? You have paternalism and you have male dictators and you have fascism, and they're all working together, and Vidal is just amazing as this fascistic symbol for the this patriarchy, this oppressive evil regime, and I don't think there's any better villain that you could have created for that.
Hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. Last thing on Pan's Labyrinth before we move on, we touched on it briefly, or at least you did, in terms of the Pale Man. I just want to say I love how iconic the Pale Man is for someone who has one scene. He is in one scene, and it's not even a very long scene, but just the essence he has and the impact. I know there's supposed to be parallels between the Pale Man and Vidal, how they're supposed to represent similar things, and that's all super cool and interesting. But speaking of the Pale Man just as a character in himself, I just absolutely love how the fact that he's only in just this one scene, he has one scene and that's it, and yet despite that, he is so iconic, so memorable. When you think of Del Toro, the Pale Man comes to mind. I love that. I love the fact that Del Toro was able to create this character that has such a strong presence to him that even though, yeah, I never saw Pan's Labyrinth. I thought the Pale Man was like one of the main antagonists. I thought he was like the main villain of the fairy tale world. No, he's in one scene, and he only gets mad if you steal his food.
No, definitely the Pale Man is one of the standouts. The other standout I think is the Fawn. And fun fact, Doug Jones played the Fawn, right? He was in the Fawn suit, and he actually learned his lines phonetically. He speaks English, the whole movie's in Spanish. So he learned his lines phonetically. He learned how to say his lines and everything. But for one reason or another, they actually had to dub him over with someone else. But he did actually learn all of his lines, and he's a fantastic actor. Doug Jones is amazing, and he deserves more props for all of the work he does.
Okay, so moving on now, we get to scrolling down a little bit. We get a Hellboy 2, and this one's rough for me because I do love this movie. I don't think it's a great movie, but it didn't capture me the way the first Hellboy did. I feel like Hellboy 2 gets really wrapped up in the romance storyline, the romance arc for Hellboy, and it doesn't work for me. Like I was never too like strongly on that relationship. It's fleshed out enough. It works. Like the story makes it work. But the fact that that relationship is such a heavy focus, I feel like the first movie had more things going on. The relationship was a part of the first one. It was there. Like it was definitely a focus too, but it wasn't like the sole focus. Here, the Golden Army, I feel like the Golden Army is more of an afterthought. That just kind of like the MacGuffin plot to get the story going. But the story truly actually cares about Hellboy and his relationship and his love life. And like I mean, it's fine, it works, but it's a step down from the first one, sadly. So, while I still think that it definitely captures the world and the characters are still lovable, the effects are still great, the action is still good, it's just such a step down. I'm sorry, this is a C tier.
I I would say it's a B tier only for the fact that since we're talking about these movies, I think it's overall more enjoyable than Blade 2, not just like with some of the campiness it has, but this movie has a lot more Del Toroisms. It has a lot more of his creative fingerprint on there. The way the Golden Army works, the different magical creatures we see and find, they're all kind of very, very Del Toro in the way they are, the way they act, the way they interact with each other. And so I would say just because it's more unique than Hellboy 1, I think it should be a little bit higher up. Although I do also have to say, because Guillermo Del Toro decided to do Hellboy 2, he had to cancel a planned sequel to Pan's Labyrinth. So, I don't know. Um, C tier I think would be fine, but personally I think it's a B tier just for its aesthetics and visuals in terms
Mhm.
of how Del Toro like it is, how unique it is compared to other movies within that same genre, like we've already spoken about with Blade 2 and with the original Hellboy.
I will say one thing that Hellboy 2 does that if the movie had focused more on this, if there had been a bigger part of it than just like kind of a small little thing, I probably would have loved it a lot more. If this was the main focus instead of the romance, I probably would have this in A tier. I love the idea of Hellboy, like he's tired of being in hiding, he wants to be public. But then like when he goes out to reveal himself, like the people are scared of him. He saves a child, and the child goes up to hug him, and his mother's just like, oh, stay away from him. And then the cops are just looking at him, and they're like holding on to their holsters, and he's just like, hey, I didn't do anything. I didn't do that. Like the all the destruction and everything. Like he shows up to help, and he's just kind of pushed away from everyone. Like he kind of expected to be seen as this hero, to be seen as like, you know, someone that's helps, that's cared for. And when he does finally show up, he's rebuked. You know, he's hated because he's different, because he's a monster. And I feel like if the movie had done more with that, if it had focused more heavily on it, because the only thing that really does is it serves to push kind of the conflict within the romantic arc and the romantic relationship. I would have loved so much more a focus on that, because that actually ties beautifully into the Golden Army plot. Rather than making the Golden Army plot just a MacGuffin thing, it would have worked really well as a contrast where, despite the fact that humanity and the human world rejects him, he still wants to fight for it and protect it and be a part of it. Whereas, you know, the prince who's seeking the Golden Army wants to destroy the human world. He sees it as, you know, a flaw, a failure. So I feel like for me, if it had done that, I would have loved it a lot more. Probably would have been A tier, but we can circle back to that one. We can circle back whether B or C, but okay. Up next, we have Pacific Rim, and this is another one where I'm going to give my thoughts on it, and then it's going to end with you giving me an angry look. Pacific Rim is a movie I love. I love this movie a lot. It's so fun. It's so enjoyable. As someone who is a Toku fan, you know, who is a fan of Tokusatsu. I've never been like super deep into Godzilla, but I have had interest in it. It's something that I have been interested in. And I also love, you know, mechas, giant robots. I've never seen any of the like flagship anime things, so like I've never seen Evangelion or Gundam. Um, but I have had interest in it. I have wanted to watch it. So these are all things that I have like a peripheral kind of experience with, but it's things that I vibe with, things that I like about, things that I'm interested in. And so Pacific Rim does everything well. It truly captures the essence of these genres of this world. And again, speaking to the value of practical effects, I think that the fact that they do have practical sets, the fact that the Jaegers are sets, they actually get plugged into these things and it's all physically made, adds so much to it. I love the fact that the Jaegers as mechs have weight to them. When they move slowly. When they fall back, it's like a subtle slow fall, and then you feel the impact of their collision when they fall down. It's not just like these are these massive mechs and they're just like running around and rushing everywhere. Like they have actual weight to them. The kaiju designs are so fascinating, so interesting. Um, I know that Del Toro has a huge love for kaiju's. He loves Godzilla, he loves Ultraman, and you can definitely feel that here. You can definitely feel just the love that he has for kaiju media and for mechs. Like it combines them perfectly in this beautiful mesh of ideas. The characters are great. The characters are all really strong, solid characters, really memorable. And there's just not many downsides to this movie that I can think of. So if I say all of that, why are you going to give me an angry look? Well, that's because I'm putting it in A tier. There's the angry look. Oh, I wish I had the camera because there it is.
I think this movie deserves the S tier, and I'll tell you why. It is such a love letter. It is such a love letter to Toku, to monster movies, to everything that makes Del Toro Del Toro. And the thing that I personally love the most about this movie is the way the pilot system works. I love the idea that these two pilots share a mind, that they, you know, have this mind meld thing that they do, and they start sharing memories and everything, and that's how they have to pilot. They have to be compatible. It's not just get two randos, hey, you and you go pilot, right? That I think is very interesting. It explores the idea of, well, what makes you compatible, right? We see a lot of different pairings in this movie. We see siblings, we see triplets, we see husband and wife, we see father and son, right? The only two pairings in this movie that are not familial in any way, or someone you love, is we have Mako Mori and what's Charlie Hunnam's name in this?
I don't remember his last name, but his first name's Jake.
Jake.
Yeah, pretty sure it's Jake.
Okay, I'm gonna look it up real quick. I feel horrible that I don't remember right now. But then we have
No, Jake is the sequel. Jake is Pentecost's son.
okay. We have. I feel so I feel like a fake fan right now. I feel like such a fake fan.
I was hyping you up as the Del Toro guy. You're supposed to have all this on mine. You're supposed to be like at
Riley.
1 hour, 2 minutes.
Riley Beckett. So we have Riley and we have Mako, and those two are complete strangers, right? They're complete strangers, and they manage to do this. They're like almost a perfect match. And then near the end of the movie, we get Pentecost, and we get the other guy, Chuck. We get Chuck. And this whole movie, Chuck is like this arrogant dude. He thinks he's all of that and a bag of chips. He thinks he's hot shit. He makes fun of Charlie and Mako, and so there's that issue, right? But what ends up happening is that Pentecost just talks him down and is like, but you're a simple puzzle. You have daddy issues, and that's your whole character. And that simplicity is amazing, right? I think that these character interactions are amazing. The two doctors, Dr. Herman and Dr. Newt. Yeah, call me Newt. Herman and Newt, they're a amazing pairing, because they are different branches, right? Mathematics versus biological science. But then also they're both super geniuses, so you would think they would get along because they're geniuses, they're nerds. No, they're two totally different people, right? They're one of them is very math and very logical and thinking, and handwriting is the closest we get to math is the closest we get to God's handwriting. I fucked up the line, I'm sorry. So he is amazing, right? That's Herman. And then we have Newt, and Newt is the exact opposite. He looks like a roadie. He looks like a dude. He's just tatted up. He's got sleeves. He loves kaiju because he thinks they're fucking badass and amazing, and he's studying them. And two totally opposites. But at the end of the movie, they're able to put aside those differences that they have in terms of how they tackle their respective issues, and they come together and they do their own mind merge thing, right? And I think that this movie, if I had to sum it up in one word, just one word to describe this movie, it's not robots, it's not monsters, it's not campy, it's not fun. I think the word to describe this movie is unity or humanity. And I think the biggest reason for that is because you have these different people that come from all over the world, and they have these differences, and they come together, and they cancel the apocalypse. They are able to unite, and they give it their all. Everyone at this base is working together for one common goal, one big thing. And what is that goal? It's survival. Right? The whole point of this base is not we're defending the earth because we're the best of the best. It's we have to stop this because we are the last line of defense. Because if we fail, the earth is doomed. And so they are able to put away all their differences and put away all the issues that they have to come together and fight as one singular team. And it's amazing. The interpersonal relationships that we have, Mako Mori with her adoptive father, Pentecost, they are amazing together, right? It is very much a father-daughter dynamic, right? It's not until Mako gets insulted and is seen as not good enough, or is like, hey, she's not good, right? I bet that's why you're scared of her fighting, is because she's gonna lose right away. And that leads her to prove herself, right? There's so many amazing things in this. The ideas of memories is just so amazing, right? We see a memory of Mako Mori, and she sees this giant kaiju, and Pentecost saves the day, and we see him in a fucking Superman type of pose, right? He's out there, comes out of the Jaeger, his helmet's in one hand, he's standing really proud, the light is shining behind him, he looks like a fucking hero. But guess what? That's probably not what actually happened. Why? Because it's a memory. That's how Mako remembers it. She remembers him looking like a hero because to her, he was that hero in that moment, right? We see the moment where Riley gets torn apart with his brother, right? They're fighting and his brother dies, and it's a very tragic moment, and we see it revisited, right? It's amazing how the different things happen within the different parts of the movie. The novelization. I don't want to talk too much about the novelization because that feels like cheating. But the novelization has so many more intimate, close moments with Mako and Riley. There's a moment where they're watching Gypsy Danger get rebuilt, and they're watching her, and Mako has an iPod, and she shares her music, and that's a very intimate thing to do with someone you don't know or don't know very well. Expose yourself with hey, this is one of my favorite things. This is something that I like. I'm giving you a piece of my soul, and I sound melodramatic saying that. But that's how this is being framed, and that's how this is it's being shown, because this is them being vulnerable with each other, right? If you share your music with someone and they say, damn, you have shit taste, you're gonna look at that person different, they're gonna look at you different. So it's a very sweet, subtle moment that I really wish was in the movie. This movie is just so phenomenal for so many different reasons. I think it has some of the best lines in history, right? Today we're canceling the apocalypse. This is a movie, and full disclosure, I got this movie. I pre-ordered this movie on Blu-ray when pre-orders came out on Amazon. Like literally day of, I pre-ordered it. I saw this movie twice in theaters. I wish I could have seen it more. I regret not seeing it more in theaters. That's how much I love this movie. I've watched the Blu-ray so much. I've watched this Blu-ray so many times since I got it, like a decade ago almost, that the Blu-ray is a little scratched up and it's starting to skip and freeze. That is how much I love this movie. I know I said I love Pan's Labyrinth, and Pan's Labyrinth is my number one. But Pacific Rim, I think for many, 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 many reasons, is a very top tier movie. It deserves S tier. I'm sorry, Brollin, it deserves S tier. Give it S tier, Brollin, please.
If it makes you feel better, chat likes how you're popping off.
Are they actually?
And no, okay, so much to respond to. For sure, definitely the characters, like I said, a very strong point to it. Can I just say, whoever is in charge of Netflix, because that's where Del Toro works now, whoever's in charge of Netflix, can we get a Herman and Newt Big Bang Theory style sitcom?
I don't like Big Bang Theory, but I would fucking kill for that. I would kill for that. This movie's so good, I wish it got a sequel and an animated spin-off. Sadly, that didn't happen.
Yeah, he's one of those people, guys.
There's a million reasons why I'm one of those people.
I mean, God.
Do you have 2 days to explain why I'm one of those people?
I'm gonna be doing the timestamps later for this once it's archived, and the Pacific Rim, the Pan's Labyrinth and Pacific Rim sections are gonna be half the video. We've sped through most of these to get to the ones you gush about.
I fully believe that. I fully believe that. I've been saving myself for these, because as much as I love other movies, I think these two, Pan's Labyrinth and Pacific Rim, are two of the movies that I can just talk about for hours because I've consumed that media so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so. I do really love a lot of what you're saying. The idea of the theme of the movie being about unity, the message being about unity and humanity, I love that a lot, because there is very much that idea of we can work together and we can live, or we can stay divided and we can die divided. Like, I love how at the beginning of the movie, they make a whole point of the world governments all coming together and funding the Jaeger programs and everything, and how there's Jaeger pilots from different countries, and they each have their own like funding and models and stuff. But then by the time we get to the movie, the world's kind of given up on the Jaegers, and in a sense given up on the idea of unity. They've kind of been disbanded and left on their own. And you see a lot more of that every man for themselves kind of thing. When we meet, I want to call him Hannibal.
Hannibal Chow.
There you go. I was Hannibal. When we meet Hannibal Chow, he's black markets, and he very much is. I'm in this for me. I'm gonna survive. When he finds out that Newt drifted with a kaiju, he's just like, it's you they're after. You're gonna go out there, and if all those people around you die, that's not my problem. You're not staying here. And then he gets his comeuppance, and he gets eaten. I mean, he's okay at the end of the movie, but you know, he turned his back on Newt. He kicked him out, left him to thrive on his own, and then he ended up not dying, but almost dying. So I really do like that. I really do like the idea that this movie's central theme is about unity. That this movie really is kind of a view on being able to come together for a bigger purpose, which in this case is survival, and the necessity of unity and working together. The Jaeger do not work without a sense of unity. Unless you are able to drift, you are able to become one with someone else, and you are able to truly experience what they experience and let them experience what you experience. Have that sense of openness and that sense of vulnerability to be able to let someone else into your life on such a deep personal level is something that I think is beautiful. I think that's very beautiful. This idea of, in order to save the world, in order to stop these monsters, you need vulnerability. You need openness and vulnerability and the ability to let yourself let others in, working together, coming together for a common goal, and just the power of human emotion and human vulnerability. Being able to share those experiences and let yourself be vulnerable is something very, very beautiful. The other thing that you kind of mentioned in your gush session, that I definitely want to kind of highlight is memories. Memory is fallible. Memory is one of the most fallible things. That's why eyewitness testimony is very sketchy. It's not considered concrete evidence because the smallest of things can influence how you remember things, your own implicit or explicit biases, any traumas that you have, factors like that. That's also why, if you think about, for juries, why they exclude people based off of certain factors, because that can impact their recollection of details or facts during the trial. They want people to be as unbiased as possible, and with humans, you can never be truly unbiased, and part of that is because of our memories, the way that we acknowledge and recognize things around us. So seeing the perception of memories and the shape of memories, something very, very nice that I love about this film a lot. If you're wondering my reasoning why I put it into A tier, it wasn't a knock on Pacific Rim itself. It's just, this is kind of my ideology for a tier list. When I make a tier list, I'm viewing films compared to each other. How does this film stack up against each other's? And the movies that are going to be in S tier coming up, for me, Pacific Rim does not fit in line with them. It's not because it's a bad movie. It's not because there's anything that I dislike about it, because I really cannot think of anything I dislike about this movie. It's just, comparatively speaking, I don't put it on the same level as these movies because these S tier movies are so, so high. But I do see what you're saying about why it should be an S tier, because it has all of these really amazing and beautiful aspects to it that maybe might be overlooked. It's so easy to focus on kaijus and robots and mechas and fighting, and the action's great, and the practical effects and the monster designs. All of those things are amazing and cool, and it's so easy to get caught up on that's why this is a good movie. But when you break it down to the core of the characters and the themes and the messaging and just what makes this movie beautiful, I think it does stand on the upper list in conjunction with the other Del Toro movies that I will be placing into S tier. So, despite the fact that I might not view it as strongly as you do, and the fact that I think it does not compare to the other Del Toro S tiers, I will go ahead and concede to you putting it into S tier, because I think the fact you were able to articulate so much that you loved about this and just go on this gush rant about all of these little details and all these little factors, and I'm sure you had so much more you wanted to say. I'm
I
sure you
do.
could keep
I'm waiting
going.
you to finish so I can talk about it more.
um but for me, that is an S tier movie. An S tier movie is when you come out of the experience and you can just go on and on and on about it. Like, that's what separates the S tier from the A tier to me. Is A tier are movies that I love, that I don't really have much to criticize, or I can't think of anything negative. Whereas an S tier movie is, I did not just love this movie, but I came out of it changed. The experience changed me. And I can very much see through everything you're saying that this experience did change you in a positive way. So, congratulations. You get your first S tier.
Nice. Some of my favorite things about the movie that I didn't mention. Number one, I love how Mako and Riley don't kiss. It's a little thing. It's a little thing. Any other big blockbuster Hollywood movie would have had them kiss at the end to obviously tell the audience, yeah, they like each other. They're gonna get together. But Del Toro trusts his audience. He implicitly trusts his audience to understand that the connection these two have is so much deeper than a romantic linking. These two have this very deep personal connection that very few people in the world have, not just because they're pilots, not just because they're compatible, but because of these challenges they went through together. I love the neat little thing at the end where when Soccer Pentecost is going to sacrifice himself, he says something in Japanese to Mako Mori, and it's left unsubtitled, because that's not for us, the audience. This is an intimate moment between father and daughter. This is not for us. If we know what it is because we know Japanese, hey, cool, awesome, fantastic, but that's not the point. The point is that this is a message of love, a one final message from a father to a daughter. It's a private moment. It's like, if you have a parent on life support and you're in that hospital room with them and they tell you something before they pass away, that's how intimate this moment is. It's a special moment, and I love that it's unsubtitled, that we don't need to know. And even if we don't understand Japanese, we can just intuit what the scene is telling us just based off body language and actions and dialogue and things that happen before and after this moment. It is gorgeous. I love that Mako doesn't forget her biological family, right? In the novelization, they're knife makers. They used to be a family of samurai sword makers, so knife making is in their blood. And so Mako Mori chooses to honor her family by adding the sword arms to Gypsy Danger. That's her specific contribution to its restoration. And when she first uses them, she says, "For my family," and she fucking kills the kaiju. And that is, I think, so cathartic. It is a beautiful moment because it is not just her loving and appreciating her adoptive family. It is her biological family that she's also honoring and remembering because they died because of the kaiju, and she's avenging them, right? Riley has a very similar moment when he kills that one kaiju and he empties his clip into it because he remembered, last time I didn't do this, my brother died. And I don't want my new pilot to die. I don't want this person that I'm trusting with my life to die. I don't want her to go through the same thing I went through if I die. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to kill this thing for sure. And he just eviscerates it. It's fucking amazing. I love that Del Toro in interviews says this is not a U.S. is saving the day movie. This is not a, U.S. comes in and we're going to solve all the problems. This is not Independence Day, right? This is the world saving the world, because if the world cannot come together to save the world, then we're doomed anyway. And I think this comes from his view as an immigrant, right? He's from Mexico. He lives in the US, and he's lived in the US pretty much his whole life since he started making movies. So he's been in the US for over 30 years at this point. And it's phenomenal because of the experiences that have shaped him. And he knows firsthand, hey, you can't make it on your own when you're in this environment that is so different than what you're used to. You need people to help you and support you. And in a way, that's what Hellboy talks about. That's what The Devil's Backbone talks about. But that, I think, is the ultimate thesis of Pacific Rim. People help people. And I think that this movie just is a lot better than people give it credit for. If you turn off your brain and just watch it, it's a fucking amazing movie. Robots punching monsters never gets old. But when you actually stop and think about all the little bits and pieces of nuance, it's amazing, right? The bond that Herc and his son Chuck have is interesting because there was a battle going on, and Herc, before he became a pilot, could only save one person, either his wife or his son, and he chose to save his son, and his son resents him and hates him for it. This is something that's evident even in the movie if you ignore the novelization. This man hates his father, and yet he's able to drift, right? Oh fuck. I'm legit tearing up and crying right now. That's how amazing this movie is. But it's phenomenal because you have these characters put aside their problems, right? Not just to drift, but at the end, when Herc can't drift because he broke his arm, he's going through and he tells his superior, he tells Pentecost, hey, that's my son. Take care of my son. All right? Because Chuck knows, Herc knows this is gonna be the last time he sees his son, right? And the whole time throughout the movie, Chuck is calling his dad my old man, old man, old man, right? He never calls him dad, never calls him father. And at the end of the movie, when Chuck is gonna sacrifice himself, as my father always says, if you see a shot, you take it. And it's just, fuck, it's such an amazing movie. It's fucking amazing movie.
You know, probably should have brought some water. Should have brought some water. But I love that. I love that so much. Just the amount of love and passion that you have for this movie and just all of those little things. I definitely can see why, even though I had nothing but positive things to say about it, I had nothing but praise to say. The fact that I put it into A tier elicited angry face response just because of the level of attachment and care that you have for this movie and this world, and I can very much understand why. And I love what you said. I love just the way you put it of, if you turn your brain off and you watch this, it's a fun, enjoyable movie. It's giant robots punching monsters. That's enjoyable, and you can get enjoyment out of it. Fun popcorn movie. But if you really look at the themes, the story, the characters, what this movie is telling you, it is filled with heart, it's filled with care, and it's filled with so many of these little moments that just highlight and emphasize everything about this movie that is good. Okay. So moving on now, we have reached what I like to call the Del Toro pop-up era. Now, some people would argue that the Del Toro pop-off era began with Pan's Labyrinth, and yeah, I can kind of see that, but the reason why I personally started here with Crimson Peak is because I think everything from Crimson Peak onward is just on a complete different level from his previous work. His previous movies were great. They were good, they were enjoyable, but this is where I really see the visionary that is Guillermo del Toro. Just the fact that he has not only honed his craft as a storyteller, but that he has learned how to navigate the industry. He's learned how to avoid the traps of studio mandates and compromising on his vision. These movies, Crimson Peak onward, are his vision come to life in a way that only he can. And I feel like if the previous movies, if the prior ones had been his vision entirely with the expertise that he has over the year, they all would have been just as phenomenal as the pop-off era. Um, I'm assuming you're gonna start the pop-off era at Pacific Rim from what we just saw, but
No. I think his pop-off era is Pan's Labyrinth. Maybe even... Yeah, Pan's Labyrinth is a good spot.
that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. So with Crimson Peak, I definitely feel like this is a really, really, really good movie. I love a lot about this movie how kind of intimate and personal it is. A lot of Del Toro's movies are kind of a larger scale. You know, they deal with themes of things like war, fascism. They deal with humanity, unity, things like that. And those are all really great themes. But Crimson Peak is, it feels like a lot more of a personal story, a lot more of like this personal family story, so to speak. And I love that about it. I love how smaller scale and more personal it is. I love how the ghosts in Crimson Peak are not the story. They amplify the story. They serve to push the narrative forward, and they serve to create a sense of world building and a sense of identity, but it's not the focus. This isn't a movie that's focused on, this ghost story. It's a lot more of a personal movie. Also, Tom Hamilton is in this and he can do no wrong, so it gets S tier.
Okay, I agree with some of your points. I think Crimson Peak is a solid movie. I think it might be more of an A tier.
Whoa, hold up. You're arguing to lower movie? I didn't anticipate that wasn't on my bingo
No,
card.
I the only reason I would say it's an A tier instead of an S tier, I think is because there are certain points in the middle of the movie that drag on a little more.
Mm-hmm.
I love the ghosts, and to quote Guillermo Del Toro, this is not a ghost story movie. This is not a ghost story. This is a story with ghosts in it. But I feel that the some of the ghosts are too much. I don't know. For example, at the beginning of the movie, we see the main character. Her name is I'm pulling it up. Edith, right? We see Edith. She wants to be a novelist. But we see her when she's young, and her mother's, passed away, and her mother appears to her as a ghost saying, "Beware the Crimson Peak," right? Which, for context, is where the manor that Tom Hiddleston has in this movie. It's called Crimson Peak because it has a rich amount of this dark red clay that he mines. But here's my problem is that, do ghosts have some kind of sense of precognition? How would the mom, a decade plus before events of the movie take place, know that something bad is going to happen in this place, right? That's one of the issues I have, is that it is too Victorian almost, which is not a bad thing, but it falls into a lot of the Victorian era book tropes, and I think that is a weakness. I love this movie. It is phenomenal. It is, I think, one of the greatest Victorian movies he's made. He's made a couple since then, but I think this movie is an A tier just because it is not as captivating. I think the costuming is fantastic. Costuming is just remarkable. One of the greatest things about the movie. I think set design is phenomenal. The ghosts, the creation of these ghosts is also remarkable. It is gorgeous. It's beautiful. But my issue is that I just feel like part of it is a little too slow for my taste. The other part is that, spoiler alert, this movie has incest, and that's, when I first saw this movie, I'm like, oh, gross! What a weird twist. I like it because it's gross. It's meant to make you feel bad. It's something that, obviously is a plot point for the movie. But now that it's been quite a few years and I haven't seen this movie as recently, relatively speaking, I feel like the incest is just incest for like, we need something bad, we need to prove these guys are bad. What's something they did in the Victorian era? Oh, incest. Hey, that's bad, that's gross, that's creepy, that's a trope, let's throw it in there. And so I feel that some of the things are just, for as much as El Toro loves, Victorian aesthetics, and he loves these classic literature. He loves The Portrait of Dorian Gray. He loves Jane Eyre. He loves all these classic Victorian books. But I feel like in this specific case, he is too close to the grindstone to be able to see the bigger picture, and I think because of it, there is that detriment. As much as I love the other movies that had bittersweet endings, this one I think is too bittersweet, right? Um, you have this whole, Edith, her dad gets killed. The two bad guys die in this movie. Tom Hiddleston and his incestuous sister die, right? But then you have Edith. She survives and she writes a book about this experience, which is cool. But it's still like just a lot of things happen, and I love this movie. I really do. It is a phenomenal movie. I love the aesthetics of it. I love the design of these ghosts because they're not just typical transparent people in Victorian clothing. It's their mangled, destroyed bodies. It is them, however, whatever state their body was left in post death, and I think that is phenomenal. That is a very creative design. But I feel that this movie is a lot of aesthetics and appearances and amazing visuals, but I think that in this specific case it's at the cost of making the movie better. It hinders it more than it helps it stand out more, I think, in this specific case.
Valid points. I definitely get what you're saying about the incest feeling more so like just existing to kind of really, really make you see, yeah, these are not good people. These are kind of awful people. And it could have been done in a better way or a different way. Personally, for me, I like exploring dark and taboo topics like that if it's done respectfully, of course, and mindfully. Like, if there was a piece of work that was pro incest, I would be very uncomfortable with that and would not like it, because an exploration of a taboo topic has to highlight why it's taboo, why it's bad. And that's done here. The incest is used to highlight and demonstrate the awfulness and bad things. So on that aspect, like, I don't really have an issue with it. But I do see how it could be a bit detracting and how it can feel unnecessary. Also, I'm going to be real with you. I put this in S tier because of Tom Hiddleston.
I fully believe that.
Look, okay, Tom Hiddleston's on screen, and I'm just like, oh, I can watch this movie. This is a movie I can watch. We gotta do that someday. Putting that on the list of things. Tom Hiddleston movies.
Too much Thor, not enough good movies.
There's only 3 Thor movies with him in it. The worst Thor movies don't even have him in it.
I would just like to point out, I don't remember any of the Thor movies.
He swears he's never seen Dark World, but he has.
The only reason I remember Dark World is because of the horrible chase scene, but we're getting off topic now.
Sorry, we'll get back to good movies today.
Okay.
But yeah, so I'm perfectly fine with putting it to A tier. I put it in S tier because of Tom Hiddleston, but in terms of things that I like that are not Tom Hiddleston related, for me, the Victorian era aesthetics and vibes, I'm all for that. I love a good Victorian era, which is funny because I hate the British, but it works so well. It's definitely just like a really, really good aesthetic, a really nice one. And it can definitely be overdone, it can be overplayed, but I feel like it works really well here, and it works to the advantage of the movie. But taking all things into consideration, I do see how maybe not necessarily an S tier, like a higher A. There's a lot about this movie that I do really love, and I do think that it's one of the stronger movies for sure. Like, it's definitely like I'll put it above Hellboy for sure. But yeah, okay. So moving on now, we get to Shape of Water.
S tier, S tier, S tier, S tier, double S tier, triple S tier, triple S tier.
We are not doing that. If we did that, you would make me make like 5 different S tiers. But yes, Shape of Water is S tier. What I love about Shape of Water is that I knew nothing about this movie other than, oh, isn't that the one with the fish fetish? Which, by the way, is a terrible way to describe this movie. Please don't call it that. That's such a disservice. It's funny, but come on. This movie's so much better than to be labeled the fish fetish movie. It is such a beautiful, beautiful movie in its tale of this tragic romance. And I love the fact that, unlike a lot of Del Toro movies, this one has more of a happy ending. It does have its bittersweet undertones to it. It does kind of have a sense of bittersweetness to it. But for the most part, it is more so on the happy side. This is more of a happy movie, and the movie itself is really just this positive experience of love and embracing love and loving others and loving yourself for what's different about you. The self acceptance, self love, and love for others and love for those that are different from you. And I think that's just a very, very beautiful message. The fact that, the main character is disabled, I think it's very, very important. I know that there's some pushback from the disabled community in regards to this movie and its depiction of disability and kind of the message, especially with the ending. A lot of people have kind of interpreted the message as being, you don't belong in society, you don't fit in because of your disability, you'll never be happy unless you leave society. um and I can kind of understand that interpretation, and I do think it's important to listen to these critiques and to understand why a community such as, the disabled community would have issues with these themes and portrayal and presentation. But I also feel like there's a lot of positive aspects to its portrayal of disability and its use of disability in storytelling. I think it is meant to be a positive movie. It's supposed to be uplifting and kind of that self acceptance. Your disability does not make you lesser. It doesn't make you undeserving of love or undeserving of acceptance. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to be accepted. You deserve to fit into society and to be a person. When it comes to disability, the most important thing to remember is just that the only thing that disabled people really want is to be accommodated and supported and just to be seen as a person. Like, we get so wrapped up in this idea of how to be mindful and how to best support, we really don't listen to, a lot of times, what they're asking for, which is create accommodations for us in society, help us to fit in, stop focusing on things like cures or solutions. Just see us for who we are, see us as people, let us live, let us exist. And that's what this movie says. This movie says, let people exist, let people be who they are, accept people for who they are, love people for who they are, and love yourself for who you are.
I think that's best exemplified when the main character, she's explaining why she is falling in love with the fish man, right? Elisa. And she's explaining to her roommate Giles, and he doesn't really seem to understand it. And so she says, she's mute. And so she signs, look at me. Look at me. And he looks at her. And then she says, and I'm paraphrasing, essentially, when he sees me, he doesn't see what I'm missing. He doesn't see what's broken. He just sees who I am, in reference to the fishman. And with that, she feels whole. She feels like a real person because presumably she's never had someone love her. And for context, this is the 1960s United States. And so this is a very big deal for her because she wants to be accepted. She wants to be loved. She wants to be seen as a person, not as a someone who's mute, a handicapped person, or anything. And I think this movie is all about that, right? Del Toro said in an interview that this movie was shaped by two big things. Number one, when he saw Creature from the Black Lagoon, right? He's always loved monsters, and so he thought that the monster and the woman in the movie would fall in love, and they would, live happily ever after. And then they didn't, and so he got upset with that. And the other thing that shapes this movie really well is his experience, like I said before, being an immigrant in the United States. Because for as amazing as he is, for as a popular filmmaker as he is, a director, he is still othered. And if you look at the climate today, and the climate when this movie came out in 2017, there was so much anti-immigrant vitriol. There was so much violence being committed, not just against immigrants, but anyone othered, right? And we still see that today. And this movie is another way of him saying, no, fuck you, fascism. Because this movie is all about not just love in the romantic sense, but love in the platonic sense, in the familial sense, and having, I hate to use the term, but having essentially a found family. You have these group of outsiders. You have a gay man in the 1960s, an older gay man at that, not this, strapping 30-something-year-old. This guy is 50, maybe 60. He's a little bit of an alcoholic, it's implied, right? He's an outsider, even though he's a white man, because he's gay in the 60s, right? You have a mute woman, a disability. You have an African American woman, and you have the fish man, and you have a Russian spy. And these people come together to create their own unity, to live freely as they wish. And I think ultimately this movie is much more thought provoking. It takes the idea that Pacific Rim had of unity and of the world helping the world, and it expands on it but at the same time narrows in deeply on more specifics. And I think this movie is just it's absolutely gorgeous. It's phenomenal. And just to close this off, to say an anecdote, my favorite anecdote about this movie, my wife and I, we were dating at the time this movie came out. We went to go watch it. And this is near the tail end of its theatrical run. So we go to a theater. It's only about a third of the way full, right? There's like maybe 15 or so people in there. And so we watch this movie. I am jaw dropped, speechless, phenomenal. I'm in love with this movie, right? I feel like I'm watching Del Toro all over again. Like this is the first movie I've ever seen. I'm gobsmacked, right? And a random dude like stands up. He's rows behind us. He stands up and he's like, "That's it. That was the movie. That was stupid." And he just was like not having it. And so the rest of the audience, and I swear this is true, like a couple people stand up and clap. I clap. I stay seated, but I do clap. We all clap and cheer because of how fucking amazing it actually was. And I think that just tells you just what kind of movie this was. It was a beautiful, gorgeous piece of art. And I just think that it is phenomenal how it's able to give us that message of unity, of not having a space for people that don't respect others, right? It is anti-authoritarian because, again, in any other movie, in any other big Hollywood movie, the fishman would be the villain, and the hero would be the American colonel who's trying to run things and keep things running smoothly, right? That would be the plot in any other movie, is we gotta contain the creature or kill it, right? But in this case, you flip that on its head. When you are the one being hunted, and you're being hunted by this person, is that person really the hero or a villain? And I think that it's just another phenomenal way to, again, say, fuck you, fascism.
Yeah, definitely just so beautiful. Really, I love the idea of coming together because of being an outsider, of not being accepted or being othered, with relation to her roommate. I love the fact that he's not the gay best friend stereotype. He's not, your typical gay supporting character. He is gay. That is part of his character, and it's an important part of his character. But that's not who he is. He's not the gay roommate. He's not the gay best friend. He is the supportive roommate who happens to be gay. But him being gay is also important to his character and his story. He didn't want to support in helping the fishman to escape and getting him out of the tank. He saw it as crazy. He saw it as, this is ridiculous. This is absurd. How can we do this? It's a US government we're going against. And what changed his mind? Going to a restaurant, seeing a couple getting hate crimed, and then him getting hate crimed for being gay, and realizing I'm experiencing this too. People like me who are othered, people who are seen as different, who are not accepted, are suffering. We are suffering because of people who are hateful and bigoted and who do not accept those that are different from them, who wants to hurt us and kill us. And the fishman is going to be killed. He's going to be hurt. He's going to be killed. I need to save him because he is like me. He is suffering the way I am suffering because of who I am. And then this is never told to us. There's no monologue about this. He doesn't give some big speech. It's all internal. It's that subtleness of experience, witnessing and experiencing a hate crime being what shapes his will to help and support this fish man. And he is so supportive and caring. Like the fish man literally eats one of his cats, and he's just like, It's okay. Don't worry. It's okay." Because he knows it's a lost and misunderstood creature, and it's confused, and everything is so strange and new. And he's the best. He is the best roommate you could possibly ask for. And then the other thing that I want to highlight is, especially right now, there is a very, very big conversation about nudity, sexuality, sex scenes in media, and unnecessary or just like shoehorning sex in to sell. And I don't want to get too deep into the conversation because it's a whole thing, but specifically in terms of Shape of Water, I love how artistic the nudity and the sex is. Like, it is used as a storytelling device to amplify the relationship and the themes, and really just show the beauty of it, the beauty of their relationship and them coming together. It's not just some sex scene that's shoehorned in because we want to sell tickets and make money. Like, I think if you're gonna have a conversation about nudity and sex in media, in movies and art, it should be artistic. There should be artistic value to it. It shouldn't be unnecessary or excessive or just, hey, we got an R rating so we can do it. And this movie does that. This movie does use it as an expression of art. I'm someone who isn't really like the most comfortable with watching like sex in movies, especially with other people. With other people, it can be just kind of just like, okay, let's get past this. But here it was just like it's a natural part of the movie and part of their relationship. So it feels like there's something beautiful about it. It truly is a work of art and artistic merit to it, and not just unnecessary do it because we can.
I think one thing to note, especially, of the hate crime that the gay roommate Giles sees with the restaurant, to note, it is specifically a black couple that is getting hate crime, being told, "Hey, you can take your food to go, but I don't want you sitting at the counter, even though it's the middle of the day and no one's there." Right? And keep in mind, this is not, the Deep South. This is not Alabama. It's not Georgia. This movie takes place, in Maryland, in Baltimore, which is technically, for those that don't know, part of the American South. And this takes place during, for those of you that don't know, the civil rights movement, and also the push for a lot of other civil rights, not just black civil rights, but looking at things like the Lavender Panic. That was a thing where, in case you're not aware, people would be fired and harassed for being gay. There were a lot of thousands of government officials, government workers that were fired because they were gay during the 1960s. So this all again ties into the idea of othering, of working as a found family. And I think this is one of those good examples of that idea of what is the other, how do we come together, right? This is another example also of authoritarianism, and how you don't just comply with blind obedience, right? Just like we saw with Pan's Labyrinth, right? You have these two cleaning ladies. They're actually interrogated when the fishman is stolen. They get interrogated. Did you do anything? Did you see anything? And the colonel himself, right? He stops and is like, "What the hell am I doing? These are cleaning ladies. Get the fuck out of here. Go back and do your job," right? And ultimately, when he's told by the Russian spy that it was two cleaning ladies that stole the fish man, the Russian spy, like, he didn't have to tell him at that point. He was dying, right? He could have died with that secret, but he decided to tell him, because isn't that fucking funny how these two women were beneath your notice, and they're just two regular old ladies. There's nothing special about them. They're not a special ops team. They're not black ops. They're not anything, stand out or unique. They don't have any specialized training. And they were beneath notice. And they beat you. and you're a fucking loser for that. And again, it echoes the same ideology that was being told to us in Pan's Labyrinth of how authoritarianism has its own blind spots, and you don't see the people that are beneath you within this authoritarian system. And I just think that's another remarkable thing about this movie.
Very much so. The antagonist here, he might not be as evil as Vidal was, but he definitely has his own bit of evilness. Also, kind of, again, going to the whole sex as an art form type thing. I love the contrast between when he's having sex with, it's just like very like rough public thing, like, he's just kind of showing off, like, I'm a man and I'm gonna fuck my wife, compared to the more intimate and passionate moment of love between our main characters. That contrast right there is really beautiful and really amplifies true love, true beauty, true connection, versus this misogynistic idea of, I am a man, I am going to subject my woman to my will. So definitely not as evil as Vidal, but he works really well as an antagonist too. I love him a lot. All right, so moving on, we have. Okay, so we have two more, technically three. Frankenstein is not on this tier list. We will talk about it, and then I'll just Photoshop Frankenstein onto the list when I post this on social media. But we have Nightmare Alley. And I can best describe Nightmare Alley. If I was going to make another tier of my own, I won't. But if I was going to put it in the tier called Everyone in this movie is an asshole tier. There is only one character in this movie who is not selfish, self-serving, manipulative asshole. Everyone in this movie, save for one, is a terrible person. These are all terrible people, most of whom get their comeuppances. And I love that. I love that this is just a film full of terrible people. There are no heroes in this movie. There's no one to root for, no one to care for. You want everyone to lose and everyone to suffer. I love how this is a more down-to-earth movie. There's nothing supernatural about it. There's no ghosts. There's no spirits. There's no monsters. It's a con man. It's a con man running his hustle, manipulating people, using mentalism and psychology. And I love just how manipulative he is, using his charisma to learn. And just the environment of it, the vibes of it. It's just like, do I want to put this in this movie made me depressed here? Because it didn't make me depressed, but I could. Because this movie, everyone just sucks. Everyone's terrible in this movie. But I love that. I love the fact that it is just a movie full of really shitty people who do really shitty things, who have shitty things happen to them. And it is a straightforward movie. There's no twist. There's no hidden monsters. There's no spirits or ghosts. Man is the villain.
No, I think that's the best way to describe this movie. Is just man is the villain. It is a phenomenal movie because of the psychological impact of it and of how it is all about using your powers for evil, right? And fun fact, this is one of those movies that's an adaptation. In this case, it's an adaptation of a novel, and Ron Perlman actually gave this movie this novel to Guillermo Del Toro way back when they did Cronus, I think it was. So Guillermo Del Toro's had this movie in his head for pretty much 30 years. And when it finally comes out, it is phenomenal, right? It is a fantastic novel. It's a fantastic movie as well. And I really do just think it is humans bad, smiley face. This one has no optimism. This one has no bittersweet ending. This one has nothing going for it except humans are bad, smiley face. It has a lot of Del Toroisms in it, and I love that. It has a lot of really beautiful cinematography and costume design, and it is a phenomenal movie, but it is very much a depressing people suck smiley face.
Yeah, this one would probably be more fitting for this movie made me depressed here. But I love the idea of giving Pan's Labyrinth a tier of its own, so I'm just putting it in A.
Excellent.
But yeah, so very much just a really good movie to watch if you're just in a people suck kind of mood. Like I said, I am an optimism at heart. I believe in the good of people, so something like this normally would not vibe with me. Normally I am not a fan of cynical or pessimistic movies like this that are just like people are terrible, people suck, and bad things happen to bad people. But this movie works so well because it really does highlight just like how far someone falls because of their own actions. Like I said, I love the fact that everyone in this movie is a terrible person and they all get their comeuppance in some way, shape, or form. The only character who doesn't really get comeuppance would be the psychiatrist. I forget her name, but the doctor lady who conned the con. um
Lilith Ritter.
Yeah, there you go. She's the only one that doesn't really get any comeuppance. She kind of gets away scot free. She gets the money. She frames him. She gets to keep her reputation and her license. M. Night Shyamalan, I owe you an apology. During the Shyamalan video, I said that you write the worst therapists and psychologists in movies. You've been dethroned. This is the worst psychologist in any movie. This is the most unethical, most corrupt, awful psychiatrist ever. Like, it is using psychology for manipulation's sake, manipulating those around you. Like, if there is someone who deserves to lose their license and get shot, it is her. It is not Bruce Willis, it is her. So, this movie is just filled with awful people that have awful things happen to it, but it's a fun movie. It really is. And everyone gets their comeuppance. Everyone, bad things happen to bad people. And I like that. I am not a fan of pessimistic or cynical media, but this works. It works, and I'm able to enjoy it despite that natural aversion, and typically leaning more towards optimistic and hopeful viewpoints and wanting to believe people are good, humanity good, which is the theme of Del Toro's other movies. So it's actually like a nice little contrast where other movies have that more hopeful undertone about humanity and unity. This one's just like, nah, people suck.
Honestly, hard agree.
Okay. And then the last one here, before Frankenstein, is Pinocchio. And I gotta say, with Pinocchio,
S tier.
yeah, yes here. But with Pinocchio, Pinocchio is actually a story that I had never seen prior to this. I never saw the Disney Pinocchio. I never saw any of the million Pinocchio adaptations. I never saw the live action Pinocchio. None. The only thing I knew about Pinocchio was just cultural awareness, things that you know just from existing in the cultural sphere. So I knew he was a puppet that came to life. I knew he had a conscience named Jiminy Cricket. If he lies, his nose grows, and his best friend turns into a donkey. That's what I knew about him. Um, and this blew me away. I did not expect to love this as much as I did. I thought it was going to be just a fun movie. I thought it was going to be enjoyable. It is so beautiful. It has so much heart and soul to it. The music is incredible. The music just amplifies everything. Um, I think my personal favorite track from this probably has to be Ciao Papa. Like, that song just makes me cry so much. It is such a beautiful moment of Pinocchio saying goodbye to his father so that he can go work in the circus and send money for his father back home. And then when he learns that he was being conned, he was being scammed, his father wasn't getting any money, just that pain. I love I love how this was able to kind of tie in, fascism, and tie in the idea of fascism corrupting. Um, Podesto is a character I find so interesting, so fascinating. Because when we first meet him, yeah, he's kind of like he's kind of a strict guy. He's kind of by the books, listen to the rules kind of guy. But he has heart to him. You can tell that he has a heart. You can tell that he cares. He tells his son to go wait by the fireplace so that he'll be warm. He listens to Geppetto, and he mourns for his lost son, for um Carlito?
I believe so. Let me double check. Carlo.
Carlo. I couldn't remember if it was Carlo or Carlito. but like he mourns for his lost son. He does say, he does offer like his condolences. He wants Pinocchio to go to school and to learn to follow the rules. He doesn't immediately see him as some kind of abomination or monstrosity that needs to be destroyed. He's just like, turn him into a good boy. Send him to school. But over the course of the movie, he gets more and more power, he gets more authority, and that corrupts him. He becomes more heartless, more cruel. By the end of the movie, the only thing he cares about is service towards Mussolini and furthering the power of Italy and fascism. And just his final scene before he dies, the shoot the puppet scene, like it is just so powerful because you see just how much he has been corrupted by this power that he was given. He was never a great guy. He was always kind of like, this stern, strict asshole kind of guy, but he falls into this just powerful fascistic character because of this position of power that he's given. And as he gains more and more power, he falls deeper and deeper into the grip of fascism, but until the point where he's willing to basically kill his own son in the name of fascism. And that to me is just like, it really highlights everything about how fascism destroys from within.
No, definitely agree. And this is another one of those blind obedience is bad movies. That's one of those common themes throughout many of Del Toro's movies, right? You have the idea of blind obedience, right? You have to respect the law even if it's bad, and that's not a good lesson to be teaching kids, right? You have this authority figure, the Podesta, who is abusing his power, especially at the end of it, right? Once he sees the potential of Pinocchio as an undying soldier, he says, okay, he doesn't need to be a boy, he doesn't need to go to school, let's take him to be a soldier and serve the fatherland, because that's the best thing he can do right now, right? And so we are viewing that. We're viewing the change and the growth of fascism within the country, right? The thing that I think is most depressing about this movie is that Carlo's death was an accident. And I don't mean that in a casualty because of war accident. I mean that in a, this city, this town wasn't a target, but a plane was flying overhead and needed to lighten its load, so it dropped a bomb and it destroyed part of the church, and unfortunately, Carlo was collateral damage. And I think that again goes back to the idea of who truly suffers with war. Like, not to downplay soldiers and their PTSD, but what about the civilians who didn't choose to go to war, who don't have that training, who don't volunteer or choose to see this death and carnage, and yet they die too. And I think ultimately this movie is about what does it mean to be human, not necessarily what does it mean to be a real boy. And part of that is because, unlike other adaptations of the Pinocchio story, this Pinocchio stays a wooden body even at the end. But he has the heart and soul of a real boy. He knows what it means to have a life, to be alive, and to have a family, and to live and suffer, and all these things. And he's moved beyond it. And he is, in all sense of the word, alive. Except, physically. He's not flesh and blood. He is still wood and nails and screws, but within him is that true boy.
I also really love just like the vibes and aesthetics of the underworld, the rabbit underworld, and the idea that every time Pinocchio dies, he has to wait longer to revive, as well as the idea that if he returns early, if he returns before the sand has left the hourglass, then he will become mortal. Because it kind of leads to the idea of what is a life? What does it mean to be alive? With Pinocchio, he was not meant to be. He was never meant to be alive, so he was never truly alive. And it is only when he makes that sacrifice, sacrificing his immortality, his ability to come back in order to come back early to save his dad. I think that's really powerful. And the fact that, Jiminy Cricket uses his reward for turning Pinocchio into a good boy to bring him back to life. I think that's also very powerful because it really just ties into this idea of what does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to live? What is a life worth living? I also love how when Pinocchio first, when he's first told about going to war, he's excited about it. He's happy. He's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go to war and I'm going to fight and I'm gonna, make you proud." And his dad's just like, "No, war is a bad thing. War kills. People die from war." Um, because he has firsthand experienced that. He has experienced the loss due to war, what war takes away from people, how people suffer because of war. And it kind of you kind of think about just like the fact that Pinocchio is a child. He views everything with a childlike mentality. Everything's new to him. Everything's strange. He doesn't know what things are. He doesn't understand concepts. But even beyond that, just thinking about regular kids, kids play soldier, kids play war. It kind of reminds me of the Giver. In the Giver, you have children playing war, and they don't know what it is. They don't understand because in their world they have no memories of war. They've never experienced it, and so upon learning what war really is, what it really means to go to war, he's like, how can we do this? Like, how can we play this? And I mean, yeah, it's just kids playing pretend. Like kids play pretend knights and then they stab each other and whatever it might be. They're kids playing pretend. But this idea of war as a very, very powerful thing that causes so much pain, so much destruction, and the idea that no, Pinocchio, war is not something you should be happy for. You should not be happy to go to war or to be, excited to go to war. You should not want war. War is nothing but evil and suffering and pain for everyone. Um, and I think that's a very powerful and important message. The other thing that I really love about this is just how Guillermo del Toro was able to take the story of Pinocchio. He was able to take the framework and background of it and mold it into its vision. Like we've mentioned a lot now, he is a visionary. He has his own style, his own aesthetics, his own vision. He wants to tell the stories that he wants to tell. So you have something like Pinocchio where the framework is already there for him. The framework is already set. This is the Pinocchio story, and he's able to take that framework and warp it into his own vision and fit his view of world and storytelling. That is something that is really, really beautiful. The addition of the fascist storyline tying into um, his core running theme across countless movies of fuck fascism, anti-authoritarianism is just so good because it fits the movie. It doesn't feel out of place or jarring or unnecessary. The movie works for the story he wants to tell with it.
I think the biggest indicator of that is the fact that there's no Pleasure Island or whatever it's called, where Pinocchio and all the other bad little boys go and then they literally turn into donkeys. Instead, we replace that with the Podesta military camp, where they do, training exercises, drills. They do capture the flag as war exercises, and in that sense of the word, they become donkeys, or you could say they become asses because they are obedient to the letter. They obey, and that's all they do, right? Which again ties into the idea of obedience. Blind obedience is bad, right? And actually, for a while, Guillermo del Toro wanted to do another movie that was related to the Spanish Civil War, and so it was supposed to be, like I said before, a sequel to Pan's Labyrinth, and it was meant to be this trilogy of innocence is what it was called, connecting Devil's Backbone and Pan's Labyrinth and this trilogy. But when that wasn't feasible, instead, what he ended up doing was eventually doing Pinocchio, and Pinocchio is what ended up becoming that third for this spiritual trilogy, right? And I think that's very telling because they all have that same follow through of like innocence and war and devastation and death and suffering. And I think that's very just a very poetic way to look at war, because even, for example, Pacific Rim, that has war, in this case, against the kaijus at its forefront, it's still not war in the same sense as something like, Saving Private Ryan, where you're glamorizing the soldiers that are dying, right? Within Pacific Rim, for example, each death that we see has weight to it. It has meaning. You feel that pain. Whereas something, like um Saving Private Ryan, again, I don't think of any other examples right now off the top of my head. When we see soldiers dying, sometimes it's off in the background, right? We don't really care unless it's a named main character. And that's something we don't see, for example, with Pinocchio. We see the collateral of the innocents, how they deal with war, and that's something that most people probably don't even think about. And I think Pinocchio is a very, very great way of doing that. And let me just say, I love that Tom Kenny is Il Duce, the big head. Um, what is his name again? I forget the name of the actual dictator. Mussolini. Thank you. Mussolini. Tom Kenny voices Mussolini, and he says, "I like puppets." And then that's when Pinocchio does a puppet show making fun of Mussolini, and Mussolini says, "I don't like that puppet. Shoot him. Burn it to the ground." And they burned down the whole circus essentially that was being performed, and I think that's funny. Also, fun fact: Kate Blanchett was the evil psychologist in Nightmare Alley, and when they were working on that Nightmare Alley, Del Toro was also working a little bit on Pinocchio, and at a certain point, Kate Blanchett tells Del Toro, "Hey, I would really love to be in your Pinocchio movie. Can I be in your Pinocchio movie?" And Del Toro says, "Oof, we have all the roles filled. The only thing left is I need to find a voice for the monkey." And she's like, "For you, Del Toro, I would be a monkey. I would be a pencil in one of your movies if you let me." And it's just it's amazing because it speaks volumes of the kind of man and filmmaker he is. And I just think that's a funny story. But all the monkey sounds, that's Kate Blanchett, and I think that's really funny.
That is funny, and it's a funny anecdote too. I really do feel like any actor that has worked with Del Toro has always had such great things to say about working together with him, and I love that. I love just how a positive of an experience he makes for the actors. Because a lot of times you do hear about directors that either mistreat actors, or even if they don't mistreat them, just kind of are not the best experience to work with. Actors definitely deserve a lot better. I know it's very easy to say, oh, they're rich, they're celebrities, they have everything, but being an actor is a tough job. It really is. And it doesn't help when there's a lot of rampant abuse in the industry. So things like this, where you do have directors that are genuinely really good people that love the actors that they work with, I don't think Ron Perlman would go to bat for anyone the way that he goes to bat for Del Toro.
100% agreed. But definitely Pinocchio, I think, is one of my top tier movies. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. I love it.
Mm-hmm. All right, so the only thing that we have left is Frankenstein. Frankenstein is not on this tier list. Like I said, I will Photoshop it in later, but just gonna go off the bat and say that Frankenstein is S tier, and not only is it S tier, Frankenstein is my personal favorite Guillermo del Toro film. Out of everything here, Frankenstein is what I take away as the best Del Toro has ever done. It is going to be releasing on Netflix on November 7th, so that is coming very soon as of the streaming of this. So please do yourself a favor and watch it. I will stream it in my Discord server at some point someday. So if you do not have Netflix, join my Discord server and just wait for that announcement, because I will stream it twice. I will stream it 3 times. I will stream it once a month if I need to get as many people to watch this movie as I can, because I truly cannot recommend this movie enough. This one we're going to be vague on, no spoilers, no details, just because the movie's not formally out yet, and I want people to experience it. But what I will say about the movie is that it is beautiful. It is heartwarming, heart-wrenching, it is powerful, it is emotional. It understands the characters of Victor Frankenstein and his monster. It truly understands their story, the interconnectedness of it, their struggle, and their joint relationship. The depravity and the monstrosity of Victor Frankenstein, and the vulnerability and emotionalness of the monster. Like, it's so beautiful. I cried at least twice, if not three times, while watching this movie. And when I watch it again, I will cry again. And I love this movie from my heart. This is my movie of the year. 2025, Frankenstein is the best movie I have watched this year, and it will be the best movie I watch this year because I do not see anything coming out in the next 2 months that can hit me on a level that this movie hit me. I love the story of Frankenstein. I read the book when I was in middle school, no, high school. It was my sophomore year of high school, honors English 2. Was one of the books that we read was Frankenstein, and I loved it. I loved the story, and this does a beautiful job of capturing the message and the themes of the story while taking it in a very different direction. It deviates from the book in so many ways, but it captures the core of it so perfectly in a way that I do not think any Frankenstein adaptation has. It's not book accurate, but it is core, thematic, and messaging accurate. And you need to watch this movie. Do yourself a favor. You will come out a changed person the way that it changed me. And I said no spoilers, vagueness, but the story's about forgiveness. It's about kindness and forgiveness and loving people and forgiving yourself and shitty fathers. You need to watch this movie.
Is this your Pacific Rim?
Yeah, it might as well be. Go ahead.
I love this movie. I loved Frankenstein. I have to rewatch it at least 2 more times before I decide if it's my number one. For sure, it's my number one movie of the year. K-pop Demon Hunters is a very close number 2, but Frankenstein is my number 1. I have to watch it at least twice more to see if it's my number 1 of all Del Toro's movies, or if it's just in my top 3, or if it's in my number 2. I'm planning on watching this movie at least twice more. This movie is peak Del Toro in the sense that if we say that each movie has one piece of his soul, then Frankenstein, I think, is the rest of his soul. Frankenstein is a love letter not just to the book, but it's a love letter to Del Toro's own family and his own personal journey. And in a lot of ways, he sees himself connected to Mary Shelley in terms of not necessarily aesthetics, but in terms of ideology, in terms of what they love, and in terms of the aesthetics, the Victorian era things. And I think this movie is a lot of things. And ultimately it is part adaptation, it is part original creation, and it is part biography. Not just for Del Toro, because as much as Del Toro put his soul into this, the rest of the cast did as well. Jacob Elordi as the creature, phenomenal. Full disclosure, this is the first time I see Jacob Elordi on film, and this man has won me over. He is a fantastic, beautiful creature. He is the soul of the movie. Oscar Isaac, I've seen a lot of movies with him in it, and Oscar Isaac is phenomenal as Victor. He is as deranged and such a megalomaniac, but at the same time he's very small and vulnerable. And he's beautiful in this movie. And I just there is nothing I think wrong with this movie. I think this is I think the perfect movie if we're talking about Guillermo Del Toro, and I think it is without a doubt one of if not his best movies ever. And I need to watch it at least twice. Once to reabsorb it, and a second time to stop and think critically about it. But this is a gorgeous piece of film. And this movie has a lot of Guillermo's own culture behind it. A lot of, even though, you know, Mary Shelley was British and was Protestant, Anglican, or whatever. This sad Mexican boy found a connection, and this sad Mexican boy used that to create beauty and art where no one else saw the art, and that is essentially almost word for word what Del Toro said about this movie, that it's not just him as an adult, Guillermo Del Toro, doing this. It is a love letter to baby Guillermo Del Toro and all the things that he suffered, and it is just phenomenal. You need to watch it. If you've never seen Frankenstein or never read Frankenstein, or all you know is the neck bolts and the fire bad, watch this movie. This is a gorgeous piece of art. It is phenomenal. It's breathtaking. It made me cry at the very end, and I tried so hard not to cry. And it was a phenomenal movie. And it is very much not just a love letter to monsters and to the story of Frankenstein and Mary Shelley, but it is very much a movie not just about forgiveness, but I think its core message is that people are flawed, and we should love people in spite of their flaws, and we should forgive people because of their flaws.
That is the beauty of this movie and what I love about it. The idea that someone can commit atrocities, monstrosities, that they can do these abhorrent, evil, awful actions. They can hurt, they can abuse, and they can be forgiven. They can be this terrible person, but they can accept that they were terrible. They can accept that they hurt people and reach out to those who they hurt and say, I'm sorry, and be forgiven. It is so easy to get wrapped up in the idea of the duality between abuser and abuse victim. And I completely understand abuse victims that refuse to forgive their abusers. You know, that is a personal thing. That is something each individual has to wrap on their own, and an abuser is never ever entitled to forgiveness. No matter what they do, no matter how they change or how they grow, they are never entitled to forgiveness or acceptance from those that they hurt and those that they abused. But in cases where someone is able to forgive and someone is able to accept, there is something so powerful about that. And even if you never forgive, and if you never forgive or you never accept, being able to heal and to move on, to say, I am not defined by my trauma, I am not defined by my abuse, I am not defined by my abuser. That is a powerful message. And I think that is why I love this movie, why this movie truly does hit me on a personal level, because believing in the power of forgiveness and believing in kindness and acceptance and being able to say, we are all flawed, we are all human, we are flawed, we do things without truly understanding the pain that we cause others. And maybe sometimes, even if we do understand the pain, we justify it, we excuse it, we rationalize, we make all of these reasons for why we are not the bad guys, we didn't do anything wrong. And we hurt people and we hurt each other, and sometimes we hurt on very deep level. And there are evil, terrible people out there, there are abusers and people who do awful things towards others who maybe do not deserve forgiveness. But regardless, the idea and the core of being able to forgive and being able to accept and move on and find inner peace, that is a powerful message. This movie, it's not about Victor Frankenstein. This movie is not about his monster. It is about them, their journey together. It is a movie about their connectedness, their relationship, and how they are able to come together and just make something beautiful. And this movie is beautiful. So please watch this movie. You will come out of this experience changed, having a new perspective, and maybe being able to forgive and being able to understand why forgiveness matters. So, fuck, now I get what you mean about not crying. Okay, so before we wrap up here, this is our tier list. I made a few minor modifications. I moved Pan's Labyrinth tier above S because I want the individual tiers to be on top. I put Frankenstein at the very top. Please watch this, and I'm going to Photoshop Frankenstein in later. And then everything else is as follows. So, looking at this tier list that we have made, are there any last changes that you want to make in terms of either moving something up or down? Because for me, I think I'm pretty satisfied with this tier. I like how this shaped out. I thought there were going to be more S's. I would have expected at least 4 S's, but I mean, 3 works well. Technically, Pan's Labyrinth and Frankenstein are also S tiers, but they get their own unique tiers because they're unique movies with a unique identity. They're all
No,
unique movies, but you get what I
I
mean.
I think the tier list stands as is. I think that's a solid um layout there that we have.
Okay. All right then. So in that case, closing thoughts. We're gonna kind of speed run through this just to wrap up because we've been here for 2 hours and a half. This is my longest discussion yet. I would have expected we were gonna hit the 3 hour mark, but we did good job. We're straining ourselves. We did it, guys.
We did it.
So so speed run final thoughts. Like I said, usually in my Discord server, we watch shitty movies, we watch things that are bad, we watch things that are fun to make fun of and laugh at and cringe at. The M Night Shyamalan marathon was an experience because it went from kind of interesting creative movies to this is just awful, these movies suck, to oh my god, this guy can actually make good movies. I get it now. I see the vision. So that was, it was a fun journey, a fun experience, but I think there's also value in just watching actual art and watching actual pieces of art with emotion and weight and value. I think that Guillermo del Toro is truly is a visionary in his imagery. I was not a Del Toro glazer. I found him to be a tad bit overrated. And then it's mostly because of him. It's your fault I thought he was overrated because you did nothing but glaze him. But I get it now. I understand. I see the vision. I said that about Shyamalan. All of these tier lists of marathon just gonna end with me saying I see the vision.
It better at this point.
And that's why I do these things. That's why I do these marathons, because it's fun to watch things together, it's fun to experience, and it's fun to discuss. And I definitely had a lot of fun discussing together with you, and I hope you all had fun listening to us rant and ramble and kind of go offhandedly. That's why I do these as streams and not as recorded videos, because sometimes the flow of thought is just really interesting to listen to, and it can be hard when we don't have all our thoughts together or we forget small things like characters names or plot details, but it's more authentic, it's more genuine, and that's what I love, the genuine conversation and connectedness. So thank you for joining me, for gushing about Del Toro, for getting me into this rabbit hole. You can expect anytime Del Toro makes a movie from now on, I'm going to be there frame one at the theater with you.
Okay, that's more than I expected to come out of this when I helped rig the votes. I mean, when I participated in democracy.
So, any closing thoughts you want to say or anything you want to plug for yourself social media wise, or if you want to be a good husband and plug your wife's stuff, you can do that too.
Yes, I will plug my wife because I have no social media stuff to share. Go to You Look Good Though. It'll be in the description and whatnot.
I'll add everything in, yeah.
That's my wife's stuff. That's her social media. She's on Instagram with that and TikTok with that. She shares her art. She is not as big of a Del Toro fan as I am, but that's y'all heard me. Y'all heard me. I don't think many people can match my level. In terms of loving Guillermo del Toro. But yeah, this was definitely a great experience, and I'm just glad I was able to convert one person to loving him, because he's a phenomenal director. He's amazing, and even when his movies are bad, they are enjoyable and creative, and they are just a fun time. At the worst thing you can say about his movies are that they were just cheesy or too campy, and that's not inherently a bad thing. So I love him and I love his work, and I'm glad that more people are able to experience his work. And also, I would urge everyone, if you enjoy his work, I urge you to watch Frankelda's Book of Spooks on HBO Max if you have it. It is a stop motion TV show, and Guillermo del Toro, the reason I bring it up, is essentially the godfather to this show. These two creators emailed Del Toro, they shared their work with him, he fell in love with it, he helped them make it a TV show. So it's a 5 episode thing on HBO. It's in Spanish, but there's dubs of it, there's subs of it. Watch it, please, because last week their official movie for this TV show came out, and this was the first stop motion movie in Mexican history to be an all Mexican production. Pinocchio is stop motion, yes, but it was a co-production between a bunch of different production companies in different countries. Guillermo Del Toro is also going to be opening up a production shop soon with Netflix for stop motion, because stop motion is the essence of life, in his words. It is humanity being deliberate with art, because fuck AI, because fuck AI. And let me say it one more time. Fuck AI.
Yeah, we definitely got demonetized. I don't got that anyways. For real, I am looking forward to that. I'm not a huge stop motion guy myself, but I'm willing to check it out and give it a try because fuck AI. So, I'll go ahead and see you again next October when we do Alfonso Cuarón.
I'm down for Alfonso Cuarón. That means we get to watch Harry Potter.
Uh,
Fuck J.K. Rowling.
Alrighty then. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.
We'll see you next time.